That was kind of weak. Can y'all give me a better applause than that? Can you? Thank you all. I want to welcome you to Selma. And typically, I do recognize that it is oftentimes inappropriate to start your comments with an apology. But allow me to apologize for the air conditioner not working. Folks, it just went out. It's old. And so we're working to get it replaced. And so we're just thankful that you chose to continue to come this way to do this work here in the community, and we look forward to moving forward with it. Let me just do a couple of things. Dr. Wiggins, thank you. Want to just acknowledge, I have to acknowledge him and all of the other agencies who are here, but Dr. Wiggins is very special to me because he was the presidential appointee to assist Selma as we navigate federal agencies throughout the federal process. Also, Bill Bynum, I want you to come forward just a moment. I want to share something with you. Bill, come on. I know you were not expecting this, but you come with hope. You give us hope. So we wanted to give you a key to the city. Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of financial institutions that talk the talk. This brother and Hope, they walk the walk, and we wanted to just say, man, we really appreciate what you do. Absolutely, absolutely. They want the photo, man. They got to get the photo. I wanted to. Thank you. Now let me do this also. Let me just acknowledge the elected officials who are present. If you would just wave your hand. I see the president of the Alabama Conference of Black Mayors, Mayor Haygood of Tuskegee, Mayor Ward, former president. Good to see you there. Who is Mayor Roberts? Good to see you as well. Good to see all mayors. Any former mayors present? Once a mayor, always a mayor. Very good, Mayor. Yeah, it's good to see you. Pritchett, okay, good, good. Mayor Stewart, now Mayor Pritchett is the president of the World Conference of Mayors, and so it's good to see Pritchett in the house, Mayor Cooper. Listen, this is an opportunity for us to reimagine how we local communities touch federal agencies and how federal agencies pour into our various communities. And so all of the agencies who are present, federal agencies, we want to thank you for that. Also want to acknowledge all of our state agencies who are present. If you're a state agency and you're representing a state agency, would you raise your hand? Good, very good. I thank you so very much. Thank you. And so we're going to get right into the meat of the matter with this discussion, this conversation. I look forward to hearing the details of what we have in store for today. And that is not a personal summer. It is hot in here, and I apologize again. And as you move throughout the community, just know that I will continue today to make myself available if you have any questions at all about Selma. And so on behalf of the 9 members of the Selma City Council, the 200 municipal employees, 17,000 citizens of the city of Selma, and by the way, all the local agencies, I see the Housing Authority, any other local community agencies, nonprofits, good to see all of you here as well. I welcome you to this event and look forward to the conversation. Take care.
Please welcome to the stage Hope CEO Bill Bynum.
Mayor threw me off. It's working? Everybody hear me okay? Yes? Cassandra? Okay, good. You said louder? I am not the politician that our mayor is, so I have to work a little to be heard. But you threw me off, Mayor. Thank you so much. That was indeed an honor, because I know that we are on hallowed ground here in Selma. You know, this is a historical place. It means so much to all of us, whether we acknowledge it or not. Selma is a special place where people came and fought and lost and won, and it's history. And I'm counting on us continuing to build on that history here today. And so thank all of you for being here. Thanks for everyone who's joining us online. We are live streaming this via YouTube, and really excited to have the opportunity to be here today with so many people who care about the future of this region and the future of this country. As you heard, I'm the CEO of Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Credit Union, Hope Policy Institute, and we are a family of organizations that provides financial services. We pool resources, we do policy advocacy, and whatever else is in our power to reverse the effects of centuries of underinvestment in communities like the one we are here today. When we opened our doors back in 1994, we had about $1.5 million in capital, very generously provided us. But we knew that not only would it take more investment, but it would also require finding common ground, forging partnerships with others who also committed to a stronger, a more prosperous region where everyone could reach their potential regardless of their race, their gender, where they were born, who their parents were, or other things that were beyond their control. Fortunately, many allies share our belief that the economy should work for everybody. Over the years, we have been privileged to host folks who share that belief. We hosted President Clinton, Vice President Harris. We brought the Chairman of the Federal Reserve to the Mississippi Delta for the first time in the history that a sitting Fed chairman ever came to the Delta. And we brought 2 other Fed governors into the region. We brought CEOs of FedEx, Entergy, Netflix, the presidents of the Ford Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, and many other senior officials from public agencies, corporate community, and the philanthropic sector. And we worked with many of you here in the room over the past 3 decades to generate billions of dollars to support businesses, homeowners, hospitals, healthcare centers, schools, bring grocery stores into food deserts, and address other needs that have helped more than 3 million people improve their lives and strengthen their communities. But we're here today because we know that there's much, much more to do. You know, I think it's kind of poetic that the air conditioning is not working. Selma has never gotten the investment that it deserves, just like many other communities here in the Black Belt. And so we're gonna take off our shirts, not our shirts, our coats. Y'all don't want me to take off my shirt. But we're gonna get comfortable, we're gonna lean in because we know how important this region, these people are, what their potential is if they have the tools. We have seen over the years that when people have the tools, they can do anything that anyone else can do. But disproportionately, those tools are more available to some than to others. And so we're here today to lean in and try to push back against that. We're here today because legislation passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden is providing historic levels of funding for infrastructure, for jobs, for a cleaner environment, and other transformational investments. But again, we only need to look around Selma to see that the fact that these programs exist is not enough. Unless we take action to make sure that places like those in the Black Belt are equipped to access and manage these resources, then they're gonna go to better resourced, better prepared, better connected places, and the gaps between Selma and places like Selma and other places is only gonna get wider. So we're here today to make sure that that does not happen. We'll hear from experts, from local leaders who will share their perspectives on opportunities and needs in their communities, and from representatives of the Biden administration who will talk to us about what these historic resources can mean for people in the Black Belt and what it'll take to seize this moment and unlock the region's untapped potential. So I'll stop talking. It's time to get to work. During the day, We want to do everything we can to respond to your needs and address your questions. And there should be note cards on your tables that will be collected by staff. So if you have questions, you have things you want the panelists and experts to address, please write it down on a card, wave it in the air, and we will collect it and do our best to address them. But we want to get started by hearing from our good friend, Dr. Corey Wiggins. All right, before we hear from Corey Wiggins, we're going to hear from another good friend, representative of Congresswoman Sewell's office, Byron Evans.
Good morning. Good morning. Bringing greetings from the office of Congresswoman Terry Sewell. It's a great day to be here. I wanted to talk about some things that we've been talking about in our office in as far as workforce development, economic development in the Black Belt. We're actually working on a event in York where we can work on helping people get started with making $25 to $50 an hour in economic development and workforce development. That would be in healthcare, that would be in construction, that would be in real estate. Some of the partners in this would be Wallace Community College, possibly, Auburn University, University of Alabama. It's just a big possibility of workforce development throughout the Black Belt, and we would definitely want to invite some of you all there to be partners with us as well. It's a lot that can be done. Actually, it's a lot that people just don't know about. So it's a lot of money that can be, but people have to get up and get out and get started with doing this. It'll only take about 3 months to get certified to be a CDL driver, or 3 months to get certified to be a healthcare assistant. Just different types of aspects of healthcare, work construction, carpentry, and this can change the Black Belt. I mean, there's a lot of times here in Selma, people have to contract. We have to contract out to other cities, Montgomery, Birmingham. But the thing about this is that with this event, we can work in Sumter County on that day, have people come from other cities, other counties, but we can do this in other cities as well, Selma, Montgomery, Birmingham. It doesn't matter, but it's all about getting people the information. So I really don't have a lot more to say other than that, but I do look forward to answering questions to anything that may come up.
All right, so I have questions about how I can get some of my friends some of that $50, $100 an hour job. So if y'all want to write your questions, let's make sure again, we do want to hear from you out today. We're going to have a series of panels today. We're going to first hear from community experts who will share what the assets are in their towns, what the challenges are that they're facing, and what do they need to hear from the federal government and regarding these resources to help them improve conditions in their communities. And then we're going to hear from a couple of panels of federal experts. Really appreciate the White House, the Treasury Department, and other officials working with us to organize these conversations. We've got several agencies here, senior officials from the administration whose presence represents their commitment and the commitment of this administration to making this region, helping this region reach its potential. So again, I really urge you to listen. Hopefully there'll be tools that you hear about that will help you in your work in your communities. You'll make connections with people here. We have folks from the nonprofit sector, from the private sector, from the government sector, but we're all here to help improve conditions in this region. So again, really hope you'll lean in and make the most of this day. But again, I can't think of a better person to help get us started than our good friend Corey Wiggins. As Mayor Perkins said, when the president visited Selma and saw that there was a lot more work to do to help the community recover from the tornadoes, the administration ultimately tapped Corey Wiggins to lead the all-government effort to ensure that the region had the resources that it needed. Again, I can think of no one better suited for the job. After being nominated by the president in March of 2022, he was unanimously confirmed by the Senate to serve as the 5th federal co-chairman of the Delta Regional Authority. I didn't know that Alabama was in the Delta at one point, but now I know. And so you can explain that to us, Dr. Wiggins, but again, we're really fortunate to have Dr. Wiggins in his role. He's a native of Hazelhurst, Mississippi. He previously served as executive director of the Mississippi State Conference of the NAACP, and I'm proud that he was also the senior vice president and the director of the Hope Policy Institute. And, I'm glad to count him as a longtime colleague. He is, again, incredibly talented, an intellectual. He is a Barbara Jordan Health Policy Fellow with the United States Senate. He was a policy analyst for the Mississippi legislature. He knows how the sausage is made and how to get it to on our table. He was an assistant president of professor of health policy and management at Jackson State University. He is a graduate of Alcorn State University, and he has a master's in public health and health promotion and health education from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Again, this brother is strong, and we're fortunate to have him here today. Dr. Wiggins.
Good morning. Well, look, my name is Corey Wiggins. I have the wonderful privilege to serve as federal co-chairman for Delta Regional Authority. And it's my pleasure to speak with you all to bring some remarks today at this event hosted by Hope. I do want to take the moment to thank the mayor. I have, over the past year and a half, spent a lot of time in Selma. I have spent so much time in Selma that every time I come to Selma, my mom asks me now, can she go? Because if I'm not mistaken, on Tuesday mornings over here at the Makerspace, we have a bunch of folks who gather and do quilting. And was able to bring my mom here, and she enjoyed it, so she looks forward to any time I'm talking about taking a trip to Selma. And Bill, thank you for the invitation to speak and share. And I do want to take a quick moment of personal privilege to do this in public, because I hadn't had an opportunity to do this, is recognize the Regional Administrator for HUD, Ms. Jennifer Riley Collins. And the reason I am taking this personal privilege, because previously, before Jennifer became the Regional Administrator for HUD, she worked with me alongside at DRA, serving as our CAO. So we're so excited and proud of the work that you're doing at HUD, Jennifer. Thank you. And also like to recognize Congresswoman Sewell and all her support in her absence as well. For 2 years now, I had the opportunity to serve as federal co-chairman for DRA. DRA was founded in 2000. It began as a formal framework for joint federal-state collaboration to promote and encourage economic development in the lower Mississippi River Delta and the Alabama Black Belt region. We invest in transportation, basic public infrastructure projects, water, sewer, workforce development. Really, we base and invest in the building blocks of which, when you think about thriving communities. So often we want to see development, so often we want to make sure we're creating jobs, but sometimes we have to make sure that the basic building blocks that we need in communities are taken care of. We work to create jobs, build communities, improve the lives of the 10 million residents living in the 252 counties and parishes that we serve across our 8-state region. Last week, I had an opportunity to travel to DC to attend a Rural Communities in Action event at the White House, which brought together leaders from across the country to highlight important investments in rural America, as accomplished by President Biden's Investing in America agenda. With resources made available through the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, CHIPS and the Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden-Harris administration is transforming our country for the better, reaching communities in every corner of the United States, including those who have too often been left behind, all through the Investing in America agenda. Through this agenda, the administration invested in rural America by rebuilding infrastructure, strengthening workforce development, delivering clean and reliable water, lowering energy costs in rural America, among the countless other objectives. With resources available with agencies like DRA, we're investing in our rural communities. To do this work for me isn't just something that we talk about. For me, it's very personal. As Bill mentioned, I grew up in Hazelhurst, Mississippi. The truth be told, I grew up 9 miles outside of that town. It was just the closest community that we could claim. The description that I often use is if you can imagine driving down a road and you get a point in the road, land begins to open up. My great-grandparents' house is sitting to the right. My great-aunt's house is sitting across the street. My parents' house is next door. And the family church is sitting on top of a hill. That was my community. I was one of those ones who woke up and went to church on every second and fourth Sunday because it was a small congregation, because the church was at the pastor at his other church on what? First and third. So y'all know what I'm talking about, right? And far too often, when you think about the work that we have to do to support rural communities, it helps to have organizations, it helps to have people, institutions who understand that you don't have to sit in a room and tell them about your problems, because they understand the problems. What they want to do is spend time in a room talking about what? What are the solutions? What can we do to make our communities thrive? How can we address some of the challenges with brain drain? How do, in some cases in rural communities, we may not recruit the large manufacturing company, but how can we grow the small businesses that are there on Main Street? How can we make the investments in our children so at the same time they understand of why they want to come back home, live and grow and raise their families around the very people, and in my case, the same teachers who taught my dad taught me. Where everybody really knows and understand, if they don't know you by name, they're going to ask you what's your last name? Those are the kind of communities that we support, that we love walking hand in hand with in partnership at Delta Regional Authority. In FY23, DRA invested more than $52 million toward infrastructure improvements, supporting 80 projects, creating or retaining nearly 8,000 jobs, training over 1,700 individuals, and impacting more than 17,000 families, all thanks to the President's Investing in America agenda. Specifically, in Alabama, we supported 13 projects through our state's Economic Development Assistance Program, investing, and through our Community Infrastructure Fund, investing almost $8 million last year alone. And just to provide a little context of when we talk about, in this theme today, about seizing the moment, in FY21, DRA, our agency across our region, we granted about $26 million in grants across our region. Our states include parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, Illinois, and Southeast Missouri. We know this is a region that is great in need and needs more investment. In FY22, we was able to increase our investment in the region up to about $46 million. In FY23, our total investments across the DRA region was about $75 million. That was because of the historic investments by the administration and making sure that we are supporting those building blocks that support rural communities so we can create thriving communities in which our children want to live in, we want to raise families in, create the jobs, do all the things that you want to do and be able to do it at home. Through our workforce program, we supported 28 projects across the region, investing almost $12 million across our region. Just to name a couple of projects we've invested in Alabama. One of the projects we're really excited about, and we were able to announce with the mayor a couple of months ago, we awarded the city of Selma $2 million through our Community Infrastructure Fund to resurface streets in downtown Selma in Disaster Recovery Area 1. And our work in Selma, right now we're currently leading the interagency task force to support Selma and work alongside of Selma. And I want to be very intentional about the words I'm using. So often we want to take a top-down approach. We want to stand in the ivory tower and tell communities what they ought to do and what they should do. That's not how you work in rural communities. That's not how you work with people. There's this thing, and I think this is the same for Alabama as it is for Mississippi. If you ever walk up to anybody and tell them what they ought or should be doing, what folks going to do is look at you and smile and nod their head. And as you walk off, they're just going to say, bless his or her heart. Because they completely missed what you've said. But if you find institutions and organizations that are willing to sit at the table with you, to be in conversation with you, to be in relationship with you, to support what it is that you want in your community, now you are doing the work of service. Now you are doing the work to support communities who have all the power and all of the leadership. You're just supporting community and vision. The nice thing about that approach in Alabama, that is not unique. When you look at a historical context of organizing work in the Alabama Black Belt, when you look at a historical context of the work of organizations like SNCC, it was never about a top-down approach. It was about being rooted and ingrained in community to lift up local leaders and local leadership and support them in creating the communities in which they want to live in. That same example of organizing, that same examples of works of collaboration, I think is a prime model that we should all use. Whether you are a nonprofit organization, whether you are a federal government, state government, any institution that says we are about the business of doing work to serve community. So we are very excited about our work. I know we have all our federal partners here in the room today. I saw some that we've been able to work together. Our team at DRA, Mr. Matthew Campbell and Tanisha Harris, who's been working on that team to support Selma as they continue to rebuild, reimagine, as the mayor says, here in Selma. We are excited about the fact over the past year in coordination of those efforts have led to almost $30 million being invested here in Selma, in Dallas County, to support the reimagining of Selma. But not just our work here in Selma, but our work all across the Delta region. I see my good friend, the mayor from York, who I was with 2 weeks ago, where we invested almost $400,000 to redo a road leading to the county's hospital, where we've made investments in the local planning and development districts to support their capacity and supporting local communities. At the end of the day, when we think about our efforts of any institutions that you work with, there's no job for us if we can't support you. We don't exist if we cannot support local community and local people. The work we've accomplished across the years, especially in the past year, demonstrates our commitment to empowering rural America in a positive way. Together with our local, regional, federal partners, we are revitalizing communities, providing access to economic opportunities, ensuring rural Americans don't have to leave their hometowns to find economic prosperity, thanks to the Investing in America agenda. Just recently, the Biden-Harris administration announced over $671 million in new investments to strengthen rural infrastructure across the country. These projects are aimed to lower electric bills, ensure access to clean water, and vital for the health of every community. Each day, federal government is shaping the communities across our nation with new investments. You just have to seize the moment. Figure out the next step in making your community a part of these historic investments. In our role and our work, so often I find myself in so many of our communities across the region, and I hear and find so many ideas about the dreams in which people know and how they want their communities to look, touch, taste, smell, and feel. But there are challenges. We cannot overlook the challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we see from DRA and from our vantage point is that we have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of things we want to do. But in sometimes how this framework work is, if you got a economic development infrastructure, those communities are the communities who have historically got investment and have the infrastructure to do what? Get more investment. That's just what we see. That's what we know. One of the things that we've been very intentional about at DRA, in addition to listening and talking to communities, is trying to find a way to lengthen the runway so communities who need a little bit more time to get prepared, to be ready, to be positioned to access funding, have the resources that they need to do that. I would lift up, and please talk to our team, we have a new program that's about a year old that focuses on strategic planning, that we are making investments into places, communities, institutions to support planning. Why do you need to plan? We cannot, organizations are looking to fund projects. Yes, projects that should be part of a bigger vision, should be part of our overall strategy, but we can't fund just strategy. You can't just fund an idea. So what we sometimes need, and what we found is that you need resources to take that idea, to take that strategy, to turn it into something that you can put in from whether it's financial institutions like CDFIs, state government, federal government. This is my vision, there's my strategy, but here's the project on how we're going to get it done. This is what we need to get it done. So I would encourage you all, as you're here, as you're thinking about, and all of these ideas are running through your mind, all of the collaborative energy that you would have with people in the room, when you have a moment, think about how do you take that idea, start to work with it, massage it a little bit, and put it into something that when you take to institutions, that they can look at it and say, if I can support that or not. That's part of how you seize the moment. I promise you, at DRA, we're going to do everything within our reason, within our power, to be present, to show up, to listen. I always tell all our communities that we work with, if you come to us with a project, we don't start with no. We start with a conversation to figure out how we can get to yes. Now, we end up at no, we end up at no. But it's our job to serve you and to work with you and be in partnership with you. So as I prepare to leave, I encourage you to take heed of today's sessions. Think about how you can take advantage of the opportunities and resources that are available to impact your communities. Ask yourself, what is it that your community needs? What are you lacking in capacity? You know, I'll pull an old saying, closed mouths don't get fed. I got some country folks in here with me too, y'all. Y'all gotta excuse me sometimes. But take advantage of the opportunity. Seize this moment. It's not often where you can go in and be in rooms where you got federal agencies and other institutional partners lined up around the room, waiting to talk with you, waiting to engage with you. Take advantage of the moment. Take advantage of the opportunity. And just remember, we are at a time in terms of our government, our federal government, there are historic amounts of money and funding available to do all the things that you've dreamed about, to do all the things that you want to do in your community. We all have to seize the moment. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage, Kiad Burt.
Thank you, thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. How are y'all? Well, it's not too hot, is it? I'm gonna take that as a no. We're gonna make it work. All right, so my name is Kiad Burt. I'm the director of the Hope Policy Institute. As Bill mentioned, we are the policy and advocacy arm of Hope Credit Union, Hope Enterprise Corporation, and my job here today is to give an overview of the economic conditions of the Deep South, particularly taking a look at Alabama today. So let's first get started with this map here. Okay, so here you have a map of economic mobility. Okay, what is that? Well, economic mobility refers to the capacity of individuals, households, and community to improve the economic condition or move up the economic ladder. Thank you so much. Let me make sure this is on. There we go. In a particular lifetime or from generation to generation. Okay. Now this map shows the economic mobility of communities at the county level. And where you see red, you see communities that are not economically mobile as compared to their parents. And where you see blue, you see communities at the county level that are economically mobile as compared to their parents. Now what's interesting is that this data shows the economic mobility of children born to low-income parents. And so what the map is really showing that if you were born to low-income parents in, say, the Deep South where it's all red, you will see that they are less likely to be economically mobile. Whereas you see the blue, these are children that were born to low-income parents that are more economically mobile. And what you will also see is that the red seems to be highly concentrated in the southeastern region as compared to somewhere like the Midwest, okay? So let's move on. Let's take a look at where we are today. So here we have the economic mobility map of Dallas County. And what you will notice is, again, for large swaths of the county, it's all red, which means that children born to low-income parents in this area are going to be less mobile than their parents were. And then you see this small little blue area, that's the census tract where there is economic mobility. Can anybody guess who lives in that small census tract? Don't worry, I'm gonna show you. So here we have two maps of economic mobility for the town, city of Selma. On the left, we have household income by census tract, which is the economic mobility map we're talking about today. And then on the right, we have the racial breakdown of the census tracts of the city of Selma. And what I have colored here, the dark purple is the census tracts that have the highest percentage of whites. And everywhere else, as it gets lighter and lighter, there are smaller percentages of white populations. Now, according to the 2022 census, there are about 17,000 people living here in the city of Selma. About 2,000 or 17% of white. So what you really see is in that census tract, you see that the small population of whites here in Selma have greater economic mobility than the black populations in the same city. And these are children born to low-income parents. So economic mobility is extremely important, but we know that there are racial differences and disparities in who gets to have economic mobility, or who has access to economic mobility, and then those who do not. So what does this really mean? Economic mobility, having access to make more money or have more assets. Who gets access and how? Well, here's a map of 6 inset maps. These are small maps on each side, and how these economic mobility challenges correlate with other outcomes at the community level. But what's first undergirding economic mobility and the access therein is poverty. So you'll see in the same regions that had low economic mobility, they also have deep poverty for the past 5 decades. So it seems to be the case if we want to address economic mobility, we should also first address the underlying factors of poverty. But you should also be asking, what else correlates with economic mobility access and or poverty? Well, you'll see on either map of each side of the central map of poverty, certain correlations. You'll see that these deeply impoverished, low economic mobility counties and communities have poor health outcomes. They tend to have a higher density of black populations. They have higher rates of unemployment, higher rates of unbanked and underbanked households, so these are effectively banking deserts, okay? And then you'll also see that they have higher rates of access to high-cost mortgages, which is to say getting capital may be more expensive. So again, when we think about economic mobility, we have to also address some of the associated challenges that come with addressing deep poverty, okay? Now, typically when we talk about mobility, we also want to talk about wealth generation. We want to talk about how do we increase access to wealth generation assets for these communities. And the first thing we like to talk about is access to small business capital. Why? Because we know that increasing access to small business ownership will decrease the racial wealth gap. It's generally understood that the racial wealth gap currently exists at 6-to-1, where white households have 6 times the amount of wealth than black households. But when we look at small business ownership, that gap shrinks from 6-to-1 to 3-to-1. But you see something interesting. that when you look at small business access to capital, you will see racial disparities in who gets access to capital and who doesn't. So you'll see in the graph on the left that whites have a 56% approval rate for the loans that they apply for, fully approved loans, whereas blacks have 32%. Then conversely, if you look at denials, you'll see that black and brown business owners have a greater rate of loan denials. So if we're talking about increasing economic mobility, talking about addressing poverty, we also have to talk about how do we get small businesses of color to access affordable capital and financing. We'll see something similar with home ownership. Okay, we know that home ownership positively associates itself with better health outcomes, better civic engagement, better children student outcomes in K-12 and college. But we see that there's an uneven distribution of those who become homeowners and those that don't. And you will see that that's the case for every state in our footprint, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee, in so much that you see about a 20 to 30% gap. Okay? So home ownership is also a critical driver to economic mobility and financial stability here. And then lastly, well, not lastly, but also thinking about the energy burden costs and climate change as we all wave, okay, in the heat here in the room. The confluence of these factors show that in the city of Selma, and this blue outline is the census tract that has the highest percentage of the black population in the town, in the city, you will see that Selma actually ranks high, 99% in health outcomes like asthma. Okay, it also ranks extremely high in energy costs, 99th percentile. So the energy cost burden is extremely high in this area as well. So this is just another example of economic mobility being beset by some of the things that we all deal with every day. And we have folks in the room that are going to talk about funds, particularly the greenhouse gas reduction fund that can help assist with energy cost burden and reduction in that regard. Now, we're talking about economic mobility. We're talking about the federal agencies and the federal dollars that are flowing down. I'd like to have some data that shows why does that matter. Well, here you have a graph, a bar chart that shows liquid asset poverty in 2021 and 2019. Can anybody remember what happened in 2020, the year right after 2019? Look at y'all. Y'all were good students, I can tell. But effectively what happened, when COVID came, we had a lot of money coming down from the federal government to help communities persist. And what you see for liquid asset poverty, that's the measure of a household's ability to pay their bills for 3 months if they lost their job or there was an economic shutdown, right? What you see from 2019 to 2021, there's a reduction in the poverty levels, right? That when communities got money directly, right, through stimulus paychecks, through tax credits, through unemployment, we see that their ability to manage their household finances were better. So when we talk about why accessing federal dollars matter for economic mobility, it's addressing poverty directly. That's what this graph shows you. But let's take a deeper dive. We know now that more investments are needed, that this same graph of liquid asset poverty, again, varies by race, right? That there are different levels in how they responded to the federal investment. And just the main takeaway is that you see for Black and Latinos, right, they experience greater reduction in poverty, but not by the same rates as whites. So in thinking about accessing federal dollars, we want to make sure we're taking advantage and paying attention to the different nuances that each group is going to face. Now I'm coming to a close, I promise. We also have to be mindful of our capacity for our rural communities. And this map here shows that rural areas actually have less capacity to bring on federal dollars. So we have to find ways to support our rural communities in bringing down these dollars to make sure they can take advantage of these opportunities, which brings us right to our conversation and event today. So lastly, I want to take a look at the Alabama Black Belt, and you will see where the orange actually demonstrates counties, these are rural counties that have less capacity to absorb federal dollars, whereas the darker color does not. And these darker colored counties, as you can see, typically revolve around metropolitan areas like Montgomery. But right below Montgomery is Bullock County. Bullock County is in the 99th percentile to absorb federal dollars, at the very bottom. And so again, I'm looking forward to a conversation today to understand how can our municipalities and our counties absorb these federal dollars and how we can take advantage of these opportunities of a unprecedented windfall of investments to our rural areas. So with that, I will turn it over and say thank you. If you have any questions, I will be sitting right up at the table to take them. Thanks.
Please welcome to the stage the Community Perspectives Panel.
Why you clean, boy? That's you, Pastor. How you doing? Good to see you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, it's a great day to be in Selma, Alabama, and it's a great day to be with Hope. At Hope, we have a saying, a motto, is that hope brings brighter futures. And we're excited about that. We're excited about being in Selma, Alabama. We're excited about having an opportunity to bring this distinguished panel to you. We're excited about all the opportunities that will come from this forum that we're putting on. I am Nigel Roberts. Can y'all hear me? I am Nigel Roberts. I'm Senior Vice President of Community and Economic Development here in the Alabama market for Hope. We're excited about having you here in the room today and also online across the country. We have a very distinguished cast of panel here before you today from communities across the Black Belt. And they will bring you their perspectives on their community perspectives. They will discuss to you some of their accomplishments, some of their needs, and some of their challenges that they have throughout the Black Belt with bringing economic mobility to their communities. Our distinguished guest includes Mayor Lawrence Haygood of Tuskegee, Alabama, Commissioner Sumter County, Marcus Campbell, Phyllis Belcher from the Greene County Industrial Development Authority, and Christopher Spencer from the Black Belt Community Foundation. And I'll quickly just give you an introduction of who they are, and then we'll dive into our panel discussion. Mayor Haygood was first elected in 2016. He was a small town dream. Mayor Haygood had extensive community and economic development experience working with local, state, and local federal agencies and organizations acquiring federal funds throughout for his community. Mayor Haygood is currently the president of the Alabama Conference of Mayors, which I found out we have 60 African American mayors in Alabama. He was also selected as the Alabama Farmer of the Year in 1998 and received the Tuskegee University Merit Farm Family Award in 2005. Next to Mayor Haygood, we have Sumter County Commissioner again, Marcus Campbell. He has served as the commissioner since 2010, 13 servant years. And he's the project manager with the Black Belt Community Foundation, where he is responsible for governing local affairs of Sumter County, which includes funding, oversight, and supervision. And then we have Phyllis Belcher. Ms. Belcher is the first Black woman to serve as the CEO of the Greene County Industrial Development Authority. In her capacity, she has a trail of accomplishments
in acquiring federal, state, and local funding for economic development and infrastructure improvements in Greene County. And again, Mr. Spencer serves as the Chief Engagement Officer for the Black Belt Community Foundation, located here in historic Selma, Alabama. He is responsible for managing projects in the areas of civic participation and engagement, community economic development, education, and health. He works closely with nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, higher education institutions, government entities, and other grassroots leaders and organizations. So, we're excited about this. Each one of these panelists also serve and work to strive to fix economic mobility here in the Black Belt communities. We're going to start our conversation with Mayor Haygood. Mayor Haygood, will you start by painting a picture of the city of Tuskegee and discuss some of your needs and challenges that you have had with bringing federal funds and projects to your community?
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I think I could start by saying, as any of our other rural Black Belt communities, the biggest challenge we face is having the ability to access federal funds, being prepared to go after those funds. In that sense, you have to have the grant writers, you have to have the resources to pay those grant writers, and you have to have the team to follow up. And that becomes a challenge because, as we see right now in this administration, there are a tremendous number of resources available from different areas, whether it be from HUD, whether it be from FEMA, from all your different agencies, there's money available. And the challenge is to be able to access those. What we've recently done is contracted with a individual who will help us with our economic development within the city and also help us with our grant writing. We're putting together a grant writing team. Now, we've had a tremendous amount of success working with individuals and contracting our grant writing out. We've gotten resources from Health and Human Services. We had a $3 million grant going into COVID. We were one of the 75 communities around the United States that got one of those grants. We shared that with other Black Belt communities and other counties, and were able to affect a tremendous number of communities in what we were doing, a tremendous number of individuals in different communities. I would say that our success was because we coordinated with various individuals to help us out with those. Like today, we have other resources we got from the Department of ADM, through the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, through EPA. We contract with individuals who are here, like Ms. Deborah Love, who's a consultant. We contract with other consultants like William Scott from Tri-Stats, who helped us manage some of our grants. So the key and the challenge you have in a smaller community is being able to have the individuals who can put together a team to help you not only acquire the grants, but also to manage those grants. I was a grant writer for a number of years, acquired a number of grants from HUD. Thank you to HUD, and I say a special thanks to them for what they did for Tuskegee community and Tuskegee University. We got major grants from HUD, where we renovated a number of houses in the community for veterans, for seniors, through our Community Development Corporation. But after I became Mayor Pro Tem and then Mayor, I didn't have time to continue to write. So when I became Mayor, what I did was work with someone else. I wrote maybe 20% of the grant, but I contracted with someone else who wrote the grant that got us $3 million. And we contracted with someone else to come in and help us manage that. So that's one of the biggest challenges in terms of working with resources now, because what you find out is you'll lose a lot of opportunities. And as president of the Alabama Conference of Black Mayors, working with the mayor here, Mayor Perkins, and I thank him for all the work that he's done in guiding us and mentoring us. When you work with your rural communities, they don't have that staff. And so they need assistance in getting those resources. And that's what we're trying to do with the Alabama Conference of Black Mayors, is now pull together a pool of grant writers and others who can assist us in our smaller communities in accessing the grants that are available. I go to the National League of Cities. I was president of Alabama Conference of entire Conference of Mayors, all in the entire state, National Alabama League of Municipalities. And all the workshops we go to, there are tremendous dollars available. So what we've got to do is access them now, because Mr. Burke gave us the information about where we are. Did a tremendous job on that, and I really appreciate that. in terms of how you broke it down. But we can't get anywhere out of that if we don't get to the table and access those resources and then manage them after we access it. That's the challenge.
And so we're already hearing about capacity. You know, all our small towns and communities struggle with capacity. Commissioner, same question. Give us an overview of Sumter County, but also add, you know, how can municipalities work together to also go after some of these federal dollars that are available?
Thank you so much. Again, good morning to everyone, and I appreciate you, and I'd like to thank Bill and everyone associated with Hope and the great city of Selma Mayor for all having this exciting leadership conference today. I am in total complete agreement with Mayor about what he just said. It's a team effort. In Sumter County, we have around 12,000 citizens, and in Sumter County, we have the accessibility to interstate, waterway, trailway, and so many natural goods to whereas there's no way Sumter County should be labeled as one of the poorest counties in the state of Alabama, 5 days out of 7 days of a week. But teamwork is what it's going to take. We've been blessed to be able to work with great organizations like ADECA, Director Boswell, DRA, Dr. Wiggins. We've been working closely with the Black Belt Community Foundation, Chris and Felicia. And also, when you talk about teamwork, Alatom Bigby Region Commissioner, Executive Director, Mr. Riggs, you have to be willing to get in the game to play in the game. And so in order for communities to grow, we need to think regionally. Sumter County in our commission annex, we have 3 people, sometimes 2. We have a third person who is just coming in to help out, which we need to help so badly. And in order for a county and the region to strive, you're going to have to think regionally now. Because you look at it, a county commissioner in the Black Belt, there's no way you can survive on a county commissioner salary. But in order to do the work, you're going to have to be committed in it. So there are a lot of sacrifices made. So collectively, you're going to have to pull together. You're going to have to pull together with my neighbors, Ms. Belcher in Greene County. Chris is a former county commissioner. Nothing hadn't changed. And it's sad that when you look around and see where when people don't want to work together, you're really defeating the purpose. Because in order to go out and get these grants, in order to get economic development, in order to invite companies in to take a tour of your county, your communities, it's collective work that needs to be done. Let's just look what just happened in Demopolis. I'm just using this for an example because we are blessed to have the University of West Alabama in Sumter County, which is a great economic engine for Sumter County. We're looking at a new health and science school that is coming. But that's going to benefit the whole region. So we're looking at affordable homes coming to Sumter County. We're looking at people possibly opening up businesses in Sumter County. And we see the picture that that's going to paint for the growth of Sumter County. But until we work together and have the need to know that we need to access every resource that we have in order to make the county grow, that's the way it's going to be. But not just thinking on the local, your own county, but it's going to have to be regional growth.
Okay, great. And that's a good buy-in to Ms. Belcher. Ms. Belcher, first give us a little, paint us a picture for Utah, the city of Utah in Greene County, but also add, you know, what are some of the needs and how does the Black Belt Community tell us with adequate resources and investment, what would have the greatest impact on improving economic conditions and the quality of life in Greene County?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not a politician, so you may have to repeat some of that. So Greene County is a beautiful rural community that has the distinction of having 4 exits on Interstate 2059. So it's very easy to get to. However, we have struggled over the years to overcome this description, as Marcus said, of being a poverty, underserved, disadvantaged community. Now, we are no different than any other rural community on this panel, in this room, around this state or the country. We have limited resources. That is what rural means. It means you have a smaller number of people doing all the same things that highly staffed communities are doing. So that's one thing you have to always consider. I think Marcus said he has the luxury of 3 and 2 people on his staff. I'm out of the office, my staff is almost gone. We just don't have those kinds of luxuries. But still, we press on and we persevere because we know that we're in a moment now that we've not experienced in quite some time with the access to grants that are available at the state and federal level. Here's the issue. One person can't do all of that for one small rural community. For you, even for your small town, I'm sure there are a lot of mayors in here that would be able to do so much more for their community if they had a staff of grant writers to help them implement the plan that Dr. Wiggins talked about. You do need a plan that helps chart the course for the future and enables you to become progressive and successful and to change some of the demographics that we deal with. Now, I manage the Crossroads of America Industrial Park. Does anyone here know what that is? Raise your hand. I know John Laney, I know you know Marcia Levlin. So this is something, Chris and I have known each other, I think, forever. We both started in this business around the same time. He was a little kid to me, but he was so full of energy and determination and commitment. And that was really refreshing because what happens to most of our talent and our energy in rural communities? We leave. That's all you want to do. You want to get out. And so that was always so very encouraging to me. So I'm actually so proud to even be on this panel with him because he's still been here doing the work, hard, smart, and we still continue to have the same challenges. Now, I have a list here with me of things that we could do to make life better, in my opinion, and in my experience over the years related to supporting rural communities. Because I have a number of needs, but like I said, that definition of rural means limited resources, limited people. And so some of the things that I want to talk about, Nigel, I don't know if this is the right time, is that the grant process is a bit cumbersome.
Well, let's do this, some of this, Phyllis. You opened up a great lead for Chris.
Okay.
Chris, you had an opportunity to work across the Black Belt. Paint us a picture of the Alabama Black Belt from your perspective, and what are some of the needs, and how does the Black Belt Community Foundation assist with those needs?
Again, good morning to everyone, and I put my preacher voice on since I pastor in Greene County. This is a great day, and it's a great day for hope, because when you have hope, hope is an expectation that we will receive something. And I agree with this young man right here that has already got up and shared all the data with us when he talked about economic mobility. As Marcus has said, I served as the vice chair of the county commission in Sumter for 8 years and worked closely with Phyllis with the Greene Sumter Enterprise Community Economic Development in Greene and Sumter. I do think it ought to be a regional approach. But I want to share this word with you because I don't want to forget it. Reparations. Reparations. Reparations is to make an amend for something when you have been done wrong. And if someone start a race 100 years before another group start, how are we going to catch up without reparations? So it's not, it's something that's owed to this community, to Selma. Selma is the hub, it's the center of progress in our world and in our nation. And many people might not have ever come to Selma had not have been for the tornado or not for the bridge crossing. So when I think about all the issues across the Black Belt, and you look at the basic infrastructure for life, healthcare, there are 4 counties in the Alabama Black Belt region that don't even have a hospital open. You can ask anybody on this panel, and they'll tell you they're struggling with ambulance services. Can you imagine when COVID hit in 2020 and someone used the ambulance to go to the hospital? How did the next person get there before that ambulance was sanitized? And I bring that incident up because in our state of Alabama, the COVID reimbursements were done, the COVID monies were implemented on a reimbursable basis. We worked closely with Kendrick Key and the staff at Hope Credit Union to set up a fund so that small towns and cities in the counties that needed a flow of money could be able to get the dollars that they need. So in the Black Belt, we're used to pivoting. My boss is working closely, Felicia Luckey, working closely with the mayor in Kennard Randolph, the housing director in Selma, on a housing initiative. And I know that the mayor has a great vision for Selma. We know that all of these things exist. The young man, when he was doing his presentation, he talked about the impacts of affordable housing. So when you start talking about the infrastructure, we need the roads, we need the bridges, we need the highway, we need the rail, we need the hospitals. We need good, sound educational facilities. And again, Marcus said that in many cases, people don't work together. And we got to start thinking regionally about making sure that our people have the resources they need. Our motto at the Black Belt, or our tagline, is taking what we have to make what we need. So we don't go to communities and tell a community, this is what you need. We get feedback from the community. If they say that housing is the issue, then we're working on housing. We have a major problem across the Black Belt, and I know the mayor of York is here because I've been meeting with him as well. Across the Black Belt with wastewater. One of the first stops I made this morning was with the EPA table. I have 23 people today in Lowndes County doing surveys to try to help people in Lowndes County get on a list to be ranked so they can get on-site septic systems. That means that here it is in 2024, we still have people that got straight pipes leading from their homes and their mobile homes and their houses, and raw sewage just going on the ground. Now, we need the consultants. We need training and development for our leaders as well. Why? I found out when we were doing COVID access grants that a lot of the mayors in these small towns, they drive trucks. They got jobs. They got to take care of their families, right? So how is the business of these cities and towns being taken care of when you got part-time leadership? So one of the things that we're interested in is grassroots leadership development. And I know that the state, because I was a county commissioner, they have workshops that everybody's required to go to. But we really got to understand the issues and the impact of, one example, wastewater.
Chris, let's do this. Just, you opened up my next question for me. Starting to talk about, and I'll let you start with this too, just to start off. We have federal funders and participants present in the room today. What message would you like to convey to them to help you succeed in receiving federal funding? And we'll just come back down the line with that.
Okay. I'll say the same thing that Phyllis and I think everybody else has said, is that you got to make the process easier. You got to make it easier. In dealing with the folk with the long-term recovery here in Selma, it's always a bottleneck at USDA. If something is not right on the application, or if you're dealing with some people who might not have the education to be able to fill it, you cannot do community engagement without getting in the community. Thank Hope for this opportunity today, but I say make the processes less encumbersome. Make it easier for people to be able to access.
Here comes my list. The application process must be streamlined. It is just too cumbersome. And I'm a willing person. I'll write a grant application, but I'm really not a grant writer. And I do have my cards for all of the government people that are here. If we streamline the process, it is less intimidating to smaller communities. Right now, it is just overwhelming. It's so much, there is so much information that you have to provide. If I put my zip code in 35462, all of my demographics should automatically populate because we already know what they are. Or if I say I'm in the 7th Congressional District, you know what that means. There are supposedly set-asides for us, but it does not feel that way. It doesn't seem that way when we make those applications. Let's say we make an application and it's not funded, which is more often the truth than not. I'm intimidated to reapply because I'm thinking, hey, I put in all my effort there and nothing happened, but I shouldn't be. I should be able to go into that application and update a few things and reapply easily and not have to start from scratch to do all of that work again. And let's see what else is on there. There's another thing. I talked to some of the people that I work with, and another concern are the clawbacks. There are so many clawbacks on a lot of these federal funds. In rural communities, job retention is critical. We want to create more jobs, and sometimes we can, but we want to also help the people that are already there, our community partners, our community industries, help them maintain what they have. New job creation is fabulous. We would love to have that. That's not always the case, and so we need to sort of lessen that criteria so that we can keep what we have and not be fearful that if I don't do this, I'm going to have to pay this money back, or I'm going to be in trouble. Those kinds of things are quite stressful for rural communities. And I'll share this with Marcus now, but I'll come back later.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I'm in total agreement with all what has been said. What Phyllis just said and Chris just said, and I'm sure Mayor would coincide too, because we're working together as this team. There's no way you can depend, as I stated earlier, with an administrator, a clerk, and a part-time clerk to go back through that process again. Sumter County, the Black Belt have been studied enough. There's no way a person in Washington, D.C. who's never been to rural Alabama, the Black Belt, could say what we need. This process has to be done over. Why this, why not that? Because they haven't had the opportunity to even visit the area. Why would someone even be looking at an application who's never or interacted with anyone on that level or hadn't even been in this particular area? So we look at the factors right there, knowing what we need. I'm so glad that we have Dr. Wiggins here who can identify with the Delta region. Anytime you having people in these particular positions, you need to know that, one, knowing if they don't know, find out what they need to know in order to see what this particular community needs. So you look at trying to beat the horse down. You look at an administrator who has to get payroll together, have to interact with the engineer, interact with the county attorney, interact with the tax collector, tax assessor, with the sheriff. And you look at a commission, whereas in a small area, who's going to reapply that right then, right there? If you do not get funded, and then you're going to have to meet another deadline. So again, the process needs to be changed. You have been studied already. Funding is wasted on studying and studying and studying over and over and over again. We've been studied enough here in the Black Belt. Everybody in America and around the world know what the needs are. So we're here, we're advocating for help. We're advocating for needs. Again, it's obvious, but make sure that when the funding is sent, knowing that you have people know where the funding needs to go. And that's just been the good just of it. There's no way, again, and I have to circle back to this. I had the great opportunity to be part of Delta leadership. And when we visited the states, Dr. Wiggins, that we went to, and then the final one is when we go to Washington before graduation. We were in a room, and there was a staffer talking about things in Alabama. And he couldn't believe, to this date, when I talked about infrastructure, roads and bridges, as Chris alluded to, some of them still have been paid during the time when he was a county commissioner, because the funding is not just there. Where 1 mile of road costs almost $300,000. But he couldn't believe that we still had 380 miles of dirt roads, and only 375 were paid. So a total of close to 800 miles of road. But just couldn't understand it. But that's what we face. And anytime you don't have people on the ground, hey, everybody want to get to the palace. But think about the people who are going through the pit in the prison to get to the palace. So you have to make sure that you have the right people in place that can identify, and that these people are not just sending in another study, not just calling Stroudwater to reevaluate what is going on with the hospital again. There's a need. That's why the application is there. But don't just focus on, okay, this I and this I, and when the T's have already been crossed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Haygood.
Thank you. I would simply echo what has been said earlier. We've experienced most of this, and as Phyllis says it, talked about the clawbacks, we were hit with that. One of the challenges we talk about is workforce. So just about everything you do, there's requirements of employment immediately of so many individuals. Well, if a project gets delayed like what happened with us, we were hit with a major clawback. Well, fortunately, the administrative Director Boswell worked with us, but we did have to pay it. We were fortunate to be in the position to pay it because we've been working on getting ourselves economically stable since I came in on the city council. We paid that back and turned right back around and applied and got another grant. So you have to be careful of what you deal with. The advantage I had, fortunately, is that I had been in grant writing before. So many others haven't. And there are all those requirements, like you say, that a lot of our staff and others don't understand how critical it is to do those things on time. So I think one of the things we have to do, as you say it, we have to partner. That's a critical part. And get the expertise that we can get. We have to find the resources to hire some people. What we did when we got one of our successful grants done and we were able to get some indirect cost money, we put that aside to hire other people to help us get other grants. Because if we didn't do that, we couldn't apply for any more. The person we just hired to work with us under contract, because we couldn't afford to pay a salary, we put them under contract. We hired them to help us in economic development and to get grants. I had to fight with the council, well, not necessarily fight with them, but you understand, mayors. You had to stress it. You had to stress to the council, we need to put this money so we can get some more money. Because the challenge is it takes money to go at those grants. And that's what we have to recognize. So when we pay people like consultants, we have great people at ADM. Ms. Sonia Favors here, and Ms. Tanisha Marshall, who have helped us. We also had our consultant. Then we had Scott and others. You have to get whatever resources we can, like you say, partnering. And the other thing that's helped us is we have a county economic development authority. All of our cities in the county have a county economic development authority that works for us. We have to make sure it's getting what we should have in our city. We finally now have our first major industry in the city of Tuskegee. We'll come down and open up on June 18th, the day before Juneteenth. 170 jobs, a multi-million-dollar industry. It's twice as large as it is in South Korea. It's a South Korean auto manufacturer plant. We have a new training that will occur for pilot training. Republic Airlines and Lift Academy came in. That comes to Moulton Field where the Tuskegee Airmen will train. These industries, it took us over 5 or 6 years. We have one thing where the clawback occurred at the exit that still has not opened up. But fortunately, we were blessed and were able to get the deal where the university sold some land, and now Travel Center of America will take over that project. We were working with the local individual who couldn't come through with the revenue he needed. We put all we could put into it. We couldn't stress ourselves anymore, and we had to get him to sell it. Travel Centers of America will come in and take that over. We had to pay back money because it never opened on time. The jobs that were promised were not there, and it hit the city. So you have to be aware of all those things, be prepared to deal with them. But fortunately, we're rebounding back. We paid the money back. We got some new grants, and a new entity came and take over, and they will put in $8 million, and in the fall, that travel center will open, and we'll recover that money that we paid back. So it takes a lot of working together, and it takes getting people there who have the knowledge of what the technical knowledge, because like you said, the applications are challenging, and the average person just doesn't deal with it. There has to be somebody who's dealing with that, and you either have to hire them or work with them, like you said. The key thing is going to be collaboration and partnerships, and without that, we can't get it done. We're too small. It takes too much time.
Okay, and Mayor, another good lead in. You know, I'm a practitioner. I've been in the business 25 years. But you learn how to overcome. You know, you become champions. Look up one success story where you have received federal funds to support infrastructure, housing, or other economic and community development activities or projects in your community, and what did it take to make it happen? And we'll start with Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you for that question. And it's great when that happens. And it is. It's great. Dr. Wiggins mentioned about, just use for example, because I see my good friend, our good friend, Mayor Willie Lake here from the city of York. Dr. Wiggins mentioned to him today. Since Mayor Lake has been on board, he's always seeking and finding, and he believes in building together. And an example of just what Dr. Wiggins talked about, the city of York being able to get funding for their road construction leading to the hospital. We are one of the few counties in rural America that still have a hospital. And God forbid, as Chris mentioned, the 4 that don't have one, they are doing everything each and every day to try to get a healthcare facility there. But a success story about that is that that's just a way to know that, hey, things can happen if you work together. And it takes that initiative. It takes that initiative of the mayor saying to his council, we're going to have to call the county commission. We're going to have to go and meet with DRA. We're going to have to do everything to work with our congresswoman, our state delegation, in order for those things to happen. It's grand when that happens. And then you go ahead and celebrate that moment and then continue to strive to do whatever you can to get other initiatives done. Because at the end of the day, the work is always there to be done. Chris mentioned about being 100 years behind. We're 200 years behind, 300 or 400 years behind. Because anytime you look at what just happened a few years ago in Greene County, as Ms. Bertram mentioned about the exits, they have a Love's there. And for someone passing through, you'll think it's been there all the time. And that's just growth for the region, circling back to regional efforts. So in order to get the mainstream to build a black belt up the way we need it to be built up, we're going to have to, again, collectively collaborate to do what we need to do. But that's just one of the great successes that I'm really proud about today, because this is just happening and pavement is being turned over and molded, and there to give people a way to say, because prior driving up to our hospital, you would probably knock your neck out of order if you're going for something else. But if they can have that smooth ride to get the ambulance right there and be good about that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Belcher.
Okay, can I just go back 1 second and talk about reimbursable grants? That's a concern. Chris, you mentioned that earlier. So if you all can hear us, that can be a struggle for a rural community, because if we could reimburse the money up front, we wouldn't have the application in there in the first place. So please be mindful of that as we go through these processes and this commitment that you all have verbalized to help us help ourselves. Now let's talk about a couple of success stories. We have been fortunate. We have the 4 exits, and in my bio that I provided to Nigel, he didn't read my little ad that I sent him. I don't know where he got that information from. But I said earlier, I manage the Crossroads of America Industrial Port and Park, one of the largest landmass industrial parks in the southeastern United States, with over 1,500 acres of property at exit 32 on Interstate 59 and 20. And that is probably one of our big success stories, and this is why. Marcia in the back and her team with USDA, we applied for a master plan update. When I first started in this position back in the early 2000s, we were told that we needed a master plan for the industrial park. And now we're in the process of updating that. A lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy, respectfully, but that's one of our success stories. And that's one of the things, I think I'll meet with Emily later this week, that I look forward to helping her as we have identified things that we need to make us even more strategically competitive, that this is going to be the opportunity for that to happen. And we can never forget, we still struggle with broadband. When you talk infrastructure, the number one thing on that list is not what it was for my parents and grandparents, but for us, our children and grandchildren, and it's broadband.
One thing about the convenience like this, I heard you speak about not having the upfront funding. It's a major problem for small towns and nonprofits. But the great things about convenings like this is bringing the hopes and the federal agencies all together to assist with building those stacks. So that's a great point. Mayor Haygood, give us one of your success stories.
Main success story I could probably reach out to, it's a couple of them, but I mentioned the Samkey Corporation, which was actually open now, but we'll have the grand opening in the middle of June. It's a South Korean plant which had interest in locating in our area. Well, I got called out to the airport to meet with them on a Monday. They were there that week. I came back, they called me back that Friday, and they asked some more questions that Friday, and I assured them, look, we want you to be successful. We'll do all we can for you to be successful, because we understand business. If you don't make money, we don't benefit. We don't need someone to come here and fail. So they said, okay, we like that. So I was about to go back to the office, and the economic development director for the county, Joe Turnham, said they want to talk to you about something. I came back, he said, look, can you come to South Korea next week? I said, what? I said, he said, we need you to come next week. I said, hey, come next week. I got scheduled. He said, what about 2 weeks? I said, we'll try to make it in 2 weeks. We went to South Korea, met with the CEO there, and they liked what we presented. And the reason this is important, because all these years, Macon County, although we sit on exit 85 between Auburn and Montgomery, never got a plant there in Tuskegee. So finally, when we came, I met with the CEO and his wife, and they liked what we said and our interests. They chose Tuskegee. The other areas were trying to get them, but they chose Tuskegee. We got resources from DRA, and thank you, Dr. Wiggins. We are also in ARC. We're the southernmost part of the Appalachian Regional Commission. We got resources from ARC. We got resources to help us with building a new electrical substation, because this plant uses 40% more power than we were already generating in the community. So we had to go build a new substation. What we had to do as a city was to borrow money to help the utilities board, because the substation went from like 6 million to 10 million because of COVID crisis. That means the city had to put into it. And fortunately, we had built up relationships where we could go borrow $2 million, and in 2 weeks we had $2 million additional. So the federal agencies were a big help, because what they did, they came in and helped us with ARC grants, DRA grants to help us with our infrastructure, the water, the sewer, and the roads. We had to redo the roads coming in, because there's huge trucks that will be coming in there now. Then we had workforce assistance from other agencies. So now we're becoming the hood, because we got a housing crisis. The university needs housing for its students, which is sending buses to Auburn, because we don't have enough off-campus housing for our students. That's 20 miles away. We need a housing in our community where we can keep those dollars there. We also have these new plants, 2 new plants that will have employees there. So we'll be reaching out to our other agencies. But we've had tremendous help. That's probably the biggest success story, because these things happen timely. And then from ADECA, we got a special assistance from ADECA and Mr. Boswell for monies that were coming in that will help us really take advantage of this opportunity for this industry. Because otherwise, we may not have had the resources just to do it alone. We would have struggled to do it because we had an opportunity, but this opportunity was finally presented to us but because the federal agencies gave us the resources and the guidance and did it timely, we were able to go ahead and take advantage of that.
And Chris, just to add a little bit more to it, you know, since you work across the Black Belt, how have you seen, give me a success story where there has been collaboration across, you know, cities and counties to be successful?
Okay, I got a very good story for you. And the Black Belt Community Foundation, like none other, is not a traditional community foundation because we do things that normal foundation doesn't do. And I'll give you a good example and a great collaboration. When Central Alabama Head Start came under attack and got in trouble, the community asked the Black Belt Community Foundation to become the physical agent and sponsor of Head Start. That's Head Start in Dallas County, Wilcox County, Marengo County, and Choctaw counties. So the Black Belt Community Foundation served as the physical sponsor for Head Start in this region, which supports 307 families and 307 students. Head Start is a family program. In order to be able to do that, we had to work across county lines in these 4 counties. That means get support letters from the county commissions, the Children's Policy Council, the Department of Human Resources, the local school districts, the special education service, all of these things, the mental health services had to come together. And that comes up to be a $3.1 million grant each year for 5 consecutive years. And so we're in our second 5-year tour now, so you're looking at over $15 million. So I think that was a great success story.
Okay, exciting. And you know, it's exciting. You know, we know it's hard just to work inside your city with, you know, with the politics. You know, we know it's hard in the county to try to work across counties, and we know, you know, the capacity that it takes to make all this come together. You know, but again, with collaboration, you know, good capacity, resources, and other partnerships, it works. It works. What I want to do, I think we got 1 or 2 minutes left. I want to see if I can open the floor for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Willie Lake from the city of York, Alabama. Thank you all for holding a great conference here and very informative. One of the biggest things we need other than capacity is housing. If we can attract people, we have no place for them to live. So how can rural community, particularly under 5,000, how can we access affordable housing? A 1,200 square foot house is about all we need. Most people don't need the 5,000 square foot. But most of our citizens have challenged credit histories. They pay more for a mobile home than they do for a house. I had a lady come the other day, I felt for her. She wanted to pay $150,000 for a trailer at $800 a month with a 15% interest rate. And I said, why would you do that? Because my credit's bad. So we have to, I guess, one thing, teach people how to manage their credit.
So let me do this. Mayor Haygood, how have you handled and tackled your housing situation?
Mayor Lake, right? Good to see you again. One of the things that we did, as a matter of fact, our introduction to Hope, we had a workshop, Development Corporation. We have periodic workshops on various topics. We had a workshop on housing and credit. Hope came and presented the workshop at the Community Development Corporation with my assistant, Colorful Williams, helping out, and my former executive director, Ms. Grice. And they came and brought a housing specialist out of from Jackson who specialized in housing, because our credit union locally didn't deal with housing. So you've got to find a partner to help you with that. And you've got to deal with the credit. We just had a credit workshop recently, was it 2 weeks ago? And you've got to deal with those topics to get them ready for that. And that will help you get them ready for housing. And then you get someone like Hope Credit Union and other partners who have programs that will help you get the citizens there. That was a big help for us. And I'll say this other plug. I joined Hope Credit Union myself because I liked what they were doing. I went down to Montgomery and joined it, put money in, and keep money in it. And when I have extra money, I put more money in it. I haven't borrowed a loan yet. I really haven't needed for what I want to do, but I'm putting it in there so that they're there when I need them. But what I also did, I asked my daughter, who when she graduated from pharmacy school, joined Hope Credit Union. I said, look them up and see what they're doing. And she's in Birmingham. I said, but you in Birmingham, stop in Montgomery and get you an account, because when you want to get a new car, she had a decent car. I said, when you want to get a new car, you want housing, you have options. So not only your regular options, you have options because you're part of a credit union that does stuff for people, and not only business. And I learned they just did a loan not too long ago for pharmacists. So it's key to get in position, have those workshops, get those partners, talk to Hope Credit Union and others who have special ways to work with people. They are special programs, and that's an opportunity for you.
Okay. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Is it on? Yes. Hi. I had a question. Could somebody speak regarding your experience in small businesses being able to access Department of Energy funding for solar panel hosting? In Alabama, we know Alabama Power has a large bureaucracy going on, but where are we on that? I know, DOE has all of these different divisions to help minorities, but how is that taking place here in the state of Alabama?
One thing is that identifying the need and making sure we reach out to the proper channels. I would advise call to ADECA. Check in with call director Kenneth Boswell's office. Dr. Wiggins know he has an open door policy. Director Boswell and his staff, they work to make sure that they can accommodate all of our municipalities and counties here in the state of Alabama. I'm encouraging you to do that. Also, check with other agencies. You have, for example, Alabama Tom-Bigby Region Commission that serves 10 counties here in the state of Alabama, and you have RCND that also serve counties as well. Identify, talk to your local elected officials. Hey, I'm in a small county of Sumter, and don't matter what the question might be, people will say, contact your county commissioner, or contact your mayor, contact someone who they feel this, no matter what the case is. But I encourage you to do that, to find out exactly, it might be an area where Black Warrior might serve. Again, you alluded to Alabama Power, but I would say for one, please reach out to Director Boswell's office, or either find out if you're in the region of Alabama Tom-Bigby, Executive Director Riggs or Mr. Dobson can maybe help in that particular arena to get that done. And I just want to say too, Nigel, just the fact of, I know that you all, many of you probably heard about Inviva Wood Pellet Company, and a lot has been up in the air. We've been blessed in Sumter County to have the largest facility that is being built right now. It's the world's #1 wood pellet producer, alternative energy for European countries. And what happened, they had contracts that were already set up 20 and 30 years in fruition, but the scale of the scope of what it would cost was not factored in. But thanks be to God that they are up, moving, working in Epps, Alabama. So we're talking about close to, before opening day in construction work right now, 400 to 500 people will be working in Sumter County. And so a lot of times you can ask for this and that, and as the mayor of York, Mayor Lake alluded to housing. And that's one thing we're facing right now, as he know, in Sumter County, where a lot of these people want to build a house right now in Sumter County. So, but some people built a mobile park where they're hooking up their vehicles and their mobile unit and living in a mobile park. And they're paying this ridiculous price, but putting the right people in perspectives in all areas, whereas we have people in place right here in Alabama that can direct you to whatever the need might be, but make sure you be receptive and willing to do what you need to do in order to host these people and gain whatever knowledge you need to gain for whatever the case might be. It's funny, as I get ready to shut it down, Nigel, I served as president of the Association of County Commissioners of Alabama, all 67 counties from Sumter County. One commissioner in Jefferson County has more people in his district than we have in Sumter County. And I've seen commissioners all over the state who bring 3 staff peoples with them to a conference, and their office run flawless, but like as I alluded that our office would be closed with the 2 or 3 people we have. It's all about finding out what you need to do in order to make you work, your area. So don't let nobody else tell you what works best for you. Make sure you identify what you need to have done in your particular town, city, or county, and work the process. Go to Washington, do what you need to do to work it, and all will work well. Thank you.
Okay, so we won't go over, just in closing, give us just a brief closing remark, and we'll end. Chris.
Well, I started out with the church, Mayor Perkins. I'm going to end with the church. Do thy duty, that is best, leaving to the Lord the rest.
Fund DRA at the same level that ARC is funded. That is important, because this mayor has access to unlimited funds with ARC. We have very limited funds with DRA. That's important, because DRA has the greater need. ARC has been around for generations by now. And then provide us assistance with the auditing services, because we have to have audits at the conclusion of our grant process. Is that correct?
Yes.
I just happen to know a young lady here that has an auditing service, but if you all could provide that to us, that's one less expense for us. So if you had an auditing team, maybe let us select which one we have, but if you were to sponsor them for us, that's very helpful. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you again. In order for us to, in the black belt, to get to the palace, help us get out of prison, get out of the pit. We want to get to the palace. So therefore, think about it. Whenever you have these processes, make sure that you're working with people with limited resources, number one. You've heard all of this, so make it accessible for the people who want to get to the palace from being in the prison and the pit, because again, we are supposed to be in the palace. Thank you.
Yeah, I would simply say again, thank you to everyone, to our federal agencies. That, as has been expressed, the key is to make the process as simple as possible so that we understand not only the application but also the management of the grant, and then you said, as you said, the auditing in the end, whether you provide the auditors or at least provide for resources in the grant that can be audited. And the other thing I would say to all our people here, whatever capacity you're in, and thanks again to Senator Stewart, I think, there, for being here. There's another resource we can use. Patience. We are now benefiting from some of the things we started 5 or 6 years ago. And I have to laugh and just thank the blessings of the day and say, hopefully it keeps going forward, because we've been working on something, you go through those ups and downs, you get a clawback that scares you to death, but fortunately, by the grace of God, we've been getting ourselves in better condition. We took care of that, we kept on going. So realize it's a process, it's patience, but we all want to make that process better. So thank you all for your suggestions, and thank Hope for sponsoring this seminar for us in this panel.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your commitment. And again, like we said, hope, brighter futures begin with hope. Again, thank you.
Well, thank you for your attention, and we're going to take a short break. When we return, we're going to welcome to the stage the first of 2 Investing in America panels.
I'd ask the Hope folks to help return folks to their seats as well. No, we'll get to it after. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ask everyone to take their seats. All right, thank you. My name is Ed Sivek. I'm the Chief Policy and Communications Officer at Hope Credit Union. Really excited to be part of the day today here in Selma, Alabama. I've got three incredible guests who will speak on the panel, subject matter experts. To my immediate left, we have Marilyn Shazer, a senior advisor with the Department of Transportation. We have Kendall Corley, the Deputy Chief of Staff of External Engagement with the United States Small Business Administration, and Marsha Johnson, who is the Deputy State Director for the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Development. We're going to jump right in. Ms. Shazer, and then we'll go on to Ms. Corley and Mrs. Johnson. If you could just start and introduce yourself a little bit about what you do, your agency, and speak a little bit about this moment in time where we're asking folks to seize the moment around the Investing in America agenda.
Sure, and thank you. Good morning, or is it afternoon now? Whichever, it's still morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here on the panel. Really delighted to be here with such an esteemed group of panelists and our facilitator. My name is Marilyn Shazer. I am a senior advisor for the U.S. Department of Transportation. I work in the Office of Transportation Policy under our secretary. Today, some of the things I want to share with you based on what we heard from our last panel, I changed my comments quite a bit, is to share more with you about some of the things that we are doing in the department that will help you be able to access some of the funding that we will have available. So the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law provided the Department of Transportation with an increased level of funding to support communities like yours. Actually, one of the things that we've acknowledged from the beginning of this administration as a department is that transportation funds in the past and transportation projects are one of the reasons that communities were left behind. So we acknowledge that almost every time we speak, and that we don't want to be that organization anymore. We want to be the organization that we don't say reparations, we say we will repair and reconnect communities so that they can continue to advance and have substance of economic sustainability. And we also want to be able to create wealth not only for communities, for individuals. So you will hear more about that later. We're leveraging our existing authorities as a federal agency, as well as additional authorities we've been given under this administration. One of the things we're doing is to ensure, if you haven't heard about Justice 40, you should. We have taken a proactive and aggressive approach to make sure that 40% of the benefits of all of the projects that are funded from U.S. Department of Transportation under a list of programs that we have slotted for that, and that's over 100. 40% of the benefits of those projects go to disadvantaged low-income communities. We are also from an organizational perspective, diving in and taking a very aggressive approach towards equity across the board. I'm actually the career lead for the Department for Equity for the department, and that is the entire portfolio, which is very broad. We make sure that all of our grant programs include an equity component. And when we talk about equity, it means we have to meet people where they are. And it's not just equity from a transportation perspective, it's also equity in terms of being able to leverage transportation dollars to build and create wealth in your communities. So I'm going to stop there because I know that's a lot and pass the baton.
Mr. Corley.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kendall Corley. I serve as Deputy Chief of Staff for the United States Small Business Administration. We are a cabinet-level federal agency. Our 27th Administrator, Isabel Guzman, leads the agency as a political appointee and a member of the cabinet. We've heard today a little bit about the historic legislation, Build Back Better, Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, so on and so forth. At the Small Business Administration, we want to make sure that small businesses, because some small businesses are prepared and ready to do the work, because someone has to do the building. And in doing the building, someone needs to get paid to do it. So what we have, a number of programs that we offer, of course, we deal in technical assistance, and that's important. Now, you'll hear me hammer that away today because that's important. But we also deal in disaster and recovery and resilience, as well as government contracting, showing businesses and walking businesses through the process of doing business with the government. The government buys everything. Anything you can think of from A to Z, the government buys. And our businesses, particularly in underserved communities, women-owned businesses, black-owned businesses, need to take advantage of that and be a part of the supply chain and government contracting, as well as through our Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience. Oftentimes when disaster strikes, whether man-made or natural, SBA is on the ground with the technical assistance, with the loans, the dollars, to make sure that our businesses can recover. But a lot of times we often, I think, Warren, correct me if I'm wrong, 70% of our loan dollars are in personal and home disasters. So that's just a little bit of who we are, what we do. Part of my portfolio is not only external engagement and advising the administrator on external engagement, but IGA, intergovernmental affairs, meaning dealing with governor's office, local elected officials, school boards, so on and so forth, to make sure that we're hearing and listening and addressing the needs of our local communities. Prior to the pandemic, many people didn't know about SBA. Don't know why. By design, I suspect why, but many folks did not know about SBA. During the pandemic, there were a number of capital dollars that were out there, but what we saw was a lot of folks were not ready to access that capital. That was the prime reason I was brought on, to make sure that externally we can position the agency to prepare folks to access capital, to government contracting, for the technical assistance, so on and so forth. I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Johnson.
Hi, I'm Marcia Johnson. I'm the Deputy State Director for USDA Rural Development. We are housed out of the Montgomery area. I serve directly with our State Director, Navri Gordon, in helping our rural communities to thrive and to prosper and to become economically developed so that you can have jobs and be sustainable. It is our goal to get all of the money that we are allocated in our state out to our rural communities. I can say that Mr. Gordon and I both are from the Black Belt, so it's very near and dear to our heart when we are looking at projects in the Black Belt to be able to help you and to help fund those projects. We have got quite a bit of money that we received this year, particularly in our energy program, to help small businesses and ag producers to become more energy efficient. So we are there to serve. We are here to help you. We want to help you. We want to have our rural communities to be able to thrive and prosper.
Great, thank you, Ms. Johnson. In the previous panel, we heard a lot of needs. We heard about not having enough staff. We heard about limited resources, one of the quotes that I wrote down was limited resources limit people. I think Ms. Belcher may have said that. If I have that wrong, we'll get it attributed appropriately. You know, the grant process is cumbersome. You know, a need to streamline processes or do rework, a need for audits. And so, Mr. Corley, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll run it to Ms. Johnson and Ms. Shazer. What resources do the agencies sitting up here have available to help our local governments get over the hump?
Thank you. Again, as the head of the Intergovernmental Affairs, one thing that Intergovernmental Affairs team, one thing that we talk about extensively are our 68 field offices throughout the country that are composed of the 10 regions that are similar to other federal agencies that have regions around the country. And our regions are headed by regional administrators who are political appointees. But within those district offices, they are career employees that are from the community. That's number one. Number two, to the elected officials in the room, use the SBA as a tool in your toolbox, meaning if you hear about businesses that are closing, that are struggling, if you hear about businesses that need help, that want to get started, startups, those that may be in business, thinking about a business, come to the SBA. Our district team is here. Our district director is here. We offer those technical assistance that often people pay for through our small business development centers, through our women's business development centers, through our veterans business development centers. That's that mentor-protege programs. We offer the technical assistance and the time to walk you through certain processes. So use us as a tool, as a resource. We have programs that deal with business plans, that deal with, you know, access to capital. So we're here as a tool and a resource. That technical assistance is so important because people pay for that. We've already paid for that through our tax dollars. And so entrepreneurship is what we offer as an agency. We know in the past that education was positioned as the great equalizer. We know that home ownership in a lot of underserved communities is the greatest transfer of wealth. Well, we're talking about entrepreneurship as a pathway out of poverty to deal with some of the systemic problems that we have in our communities. Thank you.
So rural development has 8 area offices in this state, throughout the state. So that would be the first place that you can go for assistance. You can also come to the state office and talk with us as well about our programs and what we can do to help you. One of the first things that I would recommend, and I recommend this every time I talk with people, is don't wait till you're at the end of where you really need some money. Come to us early and let's sit down and talk about your project and what your needs may be. So that we understand what you need and who we might be able to bring into the picture to be of assistance in helping you getting funding for your project. What we see so many times is that, and it's not because you just don't know, but what we see is that the project is halfway done, and then they come to us and say, well, we need this. Well, it's a little too far down the road. One of the other things, and if you don't subscribe to the Federal Register, I highly recommend that you do that, because that is where rural development programs are announced when we are taking applications and when the deadlines are. We are there to help you, and we will help you up until when we hit the deadline. But if we hit the deadline, then we can't offer assistance after that, because we'd have to offer it to everybody. And while we do have staffing, we don't have a lot of staffing to be able to do that. We are not grant writers in our area offices nor in our state office, but we can tell you what will help you have a good application. That is our job, and that's what we want to do, is to help you to know what you're going to need to have a good application. One last thing I will say, I've heard that the application process is very cumbersome. I'm not going to disagree. I will say that in the last few weeks, I know that there was a meeting in DC about one of our applications and working on streamlining it. So thank you for saying that. Maybe I can send the flag up there to say we need to work on all of our application processes. But I do understand, and that's why if you're struggling, call us and let us see if we can help you get through it.
Okay, so I need to stay focused. Can you read the question again?
Absolutely. You know what, I was hearkening back to the previous panel where a number of our local leaders referenced, you know, some of the realities of, you know, not having limited staff to fill out applications, limited resources and people, the process being cumbersome, the need to have a strategic plan. Dr. Wiggins mentioned that in his remarks, auditing services. And so what resources do the agencies up here have available to help our local leaders navigate those opportunities?
Thank you for keeping me on track. So to respond to that, DOT, let me talk to you a little bit about the Department of Transportation because it's a little bit different than the other two agencies here. So we handle all transportation. So we have 9 different operating agencies that we are responsible for. So if it is land, if it is sea, if it is air, if it is a bridge, if it is a road, if it is a railroad track, if it is a ship, if it is an airplane, whatever your mode of transportation is, even if it's a bicycle or if you're a pedestrian, we establish policy for that across the country. So I had to make sure it's clear that we have a kind of like a broad scope. But what we do is we have recognized that we're going to acknowledge that our processes, our grant application processes, do need to be streamlined. So we have been working on that for the last 3 years. What used to be 20, 40, 50-page grant notices of funding opportunity, we're now trying to streamline those down to 10, not quite there yet, but it is a goal that we're trying to achieve. But I do want to say for you as an applicant, and I was listening to the young lady up here, and I hear and heard and understand your frustration of having to be able to complete those applications with limited resources. Your application is your story. And so the more information that you can provide to us in responding to what we're requesting in those applications is your best opportunity to tell your story. You don't get to come in and interview after that. That application is what's going to go into the process. That's what we're going to evaluate to determine who's going to get the funding. Every one of our programs is oversubscribed, meaning we have far more applicants than people we're going to award. We may have a program that has, let's say, $500 million of funding. We might get 200-300 applicants, and we have to evaluate all of those applications competitively to be able to decide who's going to get the funding. What we have done at the Department of Transportation, though, for communities like yours, is there is some specific criteria in most of our notices of funding opportunity for your organizations, your communities, to be able to be more competitive. So we may say that we can do this, and we do this at the federal level still. We may say that we want a certain percentage of those dollars to be awarded to communities like yours. So that automatically makes you more competitive. But the point here is, I know the process is frustrating. We know the process is frustrating, but we want you to tell your best story, because the people who are sitting there doing those evaluations, as somebody said, I forgot who said it, they're sitting in an ivory tower. Most of those folks have never been to a community like yours. They have no idea what your story looks like. And so what's on that piece of paper is what they're using to make a determination if they're going to award you, if they're going to award some other community across the country. So that's, I'm not getting on the soapbox and get off my soapbox, but I want to make sure you guys are clear on that. So tell your best story, because that's how we make our decisions. From a technical assistance perspective, we have technical assistance across the board as a department that we've been implementing for the last 3 years, direct to you. So it used to be where we would say, whoever the project sponsor is, they're responsible for making sure your project is successful. They're also responsible for making sure you, the smaller communities, can get assistance for your projects. So we have our Thriving Communities program, and by the way, the city of Selma actually is one of our awardees, recent awardees. That's what I was just talking to the mayor about. They are one of what we call our network communities, and what the Thriving Communities program does. Let me flip my little paper back over here, because I'm on. It actually funds technical assistance and capacity building in disadvantaged and low-capacity communities that are adversely affected by environmental, climate, and human health policy outcomes. Over the course of the last 2 years, we have awarded funding to over 112 communities across the country. And Selma is one of those communities who just got a recent award. So what we're doing with that particular technical assistant is they'll come into our network. They will work with a team that we have set up for them, but with other like-minded or similarly situated communities. And we're going to give them technical assistance to help them understand, based on whatever the community needs are, how they can successfully apply for funding, what funding programs across the department they're eligible for, up to the point, the one thing we can't do is we can't do your grant application, but we're going to do everything in our power to get you to the point of doing that application and being successful. Then we step back, the application goes in, we do the evaluation and the award, and then after that, we provide additional technical assistance to help you be successful. So that's just one of the many programs that the Department of Transportation is putting in place to help communities like yours and organizations like yours to be successful.
Great, thank you for that. And you can stay on your soapbox as long as you're dropping lines like your application is your story. I think I'll be using that down the line as well. You know, we're in a moment. We've heard about this moment we're in. We're talking about seizing the moment. We've heard reference to more resources, historic levels of federal resources, and oftentimes when these are talked about, people harken back to the New Deal and almost for inspiration or for you know, just to learn from it. But the reality is, if we look at the New Deal, is it ushered in a wave of inequality, the consequences of which we're still dealing with today. And so, you know, as we sit up here with three agencies where, if we look back through history, there have been instances where the government has exacerbated inequity. With these agencies, Federal Housing Administration was created during the Great Depression. Black residents of this country couldn't apply for loans through that system. Black residents couldn't apply for Social Security. We have Department of Transportation, SBA, USDA instances where we can all look at those. What are we going to do different this time? How are we going to be able to look back in 50, 60, 70 years and say the federal government did investing in America differently than the New Deal? And we know this because inequality is less. The grass looked like Mr. Burt's grass where the gaps narrowed. So what are the federal agencies doing to make sure that these programs, these dollars are inclusive and accessible to all? So Ms. Johnson, we'll start with you.
I can honestly say, I mean, our money is available to everyone. If you are in a persistently poor area, the Black Belt, a lot of our funding is awarded based on scores. And so when we are looking at that, if you're in a persistently poor area, you're going to score higher, so that we try to be able to put the money out in the places where we know that they need it. It is our desire to be equal to everyone, and everyone has equal access to the programs that we have available. We have over 70 programs to help fund rural communities, so there are many opportunities to be able to access funding to be able to help your community.
Ms. Shazier?
First of all, we own that. So as I said before, the Department of Transportation owns the fact that we were one of those federal agencies that created a lot of the challenges that we're currently still experiencing. But in order for us to make sure that doesn't happen again, we start from the beginning and we follow all the way through to the end when it comes to our funding, to make sure that the criteria, one, that is put in place for the funding, that the people who are receiving, or organizations, communities that are receiving the funding, that they follow that criteria. So part of that is those audits that we put people through. But also, we also are making sure that we can give direct dollars to communities like yours. So prior to this administration, it would have been very hard for a community like yours to get direct dollars from us. We typically deal with larger organizations, and as I said before, we depended on them to come to your community and do that participation, community participation, to better understand what your needs are, and then to leverage the dollars that we gave to them to make sure you were taken care of. We're not doing that anymore because we know it didn't work. So what we're saying is we have certain programs in place that communities like yours can directly access. Reconnecting Communities is one of those. It is exactly what it says it is, where communities have been cut off by modes of transportation, from access to health care, access to jobs, access to food, access to just being able to do the things that you want to do in your life. We are actually providing funding to rebuild those connections across the country. Thriving Communities is one of our technical assistance programs, Safe Streets and Roads for All. So what some people may know and others may not, there is an initiative across the Department of Transportation to better understand what our role should be in making sure that safety is first and foremost paramount in all modes of transportation for all people. And part of that is coming because of the issues that we've been having at traffic stops with African Americans. And so there we are basically saying, as an organization, we're working with the Justice Department, we're working with local communities, we're working with other agencies to better understand what's our role in that and how can we make that better. And the other thing that we're doing is internal technical assistance, and I was sharing this with a young lady earlier. We're taking technical assistance, putting it on steroids. And so we recognize that after you're awarded funding, one of the struggles that you have is how do you then execute the project? And how do you then, the first step is to get that funding obligated, because if you don't obligate your funding, you lose it. And so we have in the Department of Transportation, we just initiated technical assistance. You can't ask for it, honey. Our program office, pull up my phone. Our program offices are identifying high-risk recipients who may not make it to obligation. And there is a group of people at the department who will come in and give what we call targeted technical assistance direct to that applicant to get you to obligation. Our secretary has said to us he does not want funding going back to Treasury. And that's what will happen to your funding if you don't do that. And so then we follow on after that. Again, we give you back to your program office, and then there's so many different additional avenues of technical assistance that we're giving to our disadvantaged communities, because we recognize we're going to give you the funding. It's also our responsibility to make sure that you can manage the funding and execute the project.
Well, a couple of things. We follow President Biden's executive order on equity that he signed within the first 30 days. And there were certain steps as an agency that we went through. First thing is we resurrected the Council of Underserved Communities to evaluate all of our programs from an equity lens, made their recommendations, and we are starting to implement those recommendations now. A couple of things is we recognize the barriers in accessing capital. A lot of it is, the financial literacy piece, and we recognize in certain communities folks wouldn't talk capitalism, particularly communities where I'm from. So you have to take a step back and realize what are the barriers in terms of access to capital and government contracting. The other thing was we made it a point not to have a diversity officer or an inclusion officer. We spread it out throughout the agency, that everyone is a diversity, equity, and inclusion person. And that deals with your hiring. That means going back to where are you coming from as a federal employee or as a leader, as a political appointee, to make sure that equity is the focal point of implementing these programs. So the main thing is, well, let me back up. The final point to that is during the pandemic, it exacerbated a lot of inequities. And what we saw was a lot of businesses of color, a lot of women-owned businesses just were not ready to access capital. And what do I mean by that? One, some of the simple basic things the businesses did not have: proper license, proper insurance, filing taxes at a loss as bad at tax advice over years, you know, trying to survive, not out of fraud, but out of survival. And through the equity lens, you recognize that these businesses were trying to survive and not fraud. Now, had this been a different administration, it would have been a fraud. But through the equity lens, you recognize that these are folks that are trying to survive. So that means we had to step back and form partnerships with folks like Operation Hope, John Hope Bryant, the National Pan-Hellenic Council, which is also known as the Divine Nine. We had to form partnerships with the Urban League and the Black Chamber and a number of rural organizations through our Community Navigators program, in which we offered that technical assistance, that financial literacy, the step-by-step in order to get you ready to access capital. And then another thing that we're exploring as an agency is direct lending. Now, that's controversial with some folks in the banking industry, but that's another way of trying to level the playing field in terms of equity and access to capital.
Thank you, thank you. We can give him a hand for that. So believe it or not, just like that, we're at time. And so a couple of points I want to lift up. You know, Ms. Johnson said, come early. You know, if we're looking for help, get in there on the front end. You know, she can give you what's needed for a good application. Ms. Shazor said, your application is your story. And so, again, making sure that we tell the whole story and the best story when applying for funds. And Mr. Corley, I just want to say it's refreshing to hear someone from the federal government say the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to hear that those words are not dead. Because if we're going to make sure investing in America does more than the New Deal and closes gaps rather than widening them, we're going to have to embrace that every day. So please join me in giving our panel a hand, and look forward to spending time with you the rest of the day.
Please welcome to the stage our next panel. This is panel number 2 of Investing in America.
So, because it's, we'll put Jennifer in the middle. All right. Okay. So you want to turn it first? Okay. All right. Can you hear me? Yes. All right, well, good. Well, we're going to continue this conversation with another really stellar group of folks from the federal government, and I want to just reiterate my appreciation for to the administration, to folks at Treasury, the DRA, and everyone for helping us to pull this together. It is, you know, Selma is not the most direct place to get to, but the fact that for many of these folks, it's not the first time they've been here or representatives of their agencies have been here. So I think that speaks to the commitment of this administration to getting these resources to where they need to be. But I do want to drill down and understand more about how those resources are going to make it to places like Selma and the Black Belt. And so without further ado, I just want to go across the panel here and ask you each to just introduce yourself and say a little bit about your role and some of the, what is top of your list in terms of driving resources into places like the Alabama Black Belt. So David, I'll start with you.
Bill, thanks so much. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. So I'm David Eichenthal. I'm a senior advisor with the Department of the Treasury. I joined the Biden-Harris administration last May. It is my first time in the federal government, so I am very much a federal government rookie, but I spent the better part of 30 years working with state governments, local governments, nonprofits around the country. And I am primarily assigned to work with the Department of the Treasury on the Inflation Reduction Act. And I'm excited about that as a former local government finance officer, because I think the Inflation Reduction Act, and specifically the direct pay program, really provides this extraordinary opportunity for state governments, local governments, and nonprofit organizations to invest in the clean energy transition. And I think in particular at Treasury, we are very, very focused on making sure that every community is aware of these opportunities under the Inflation Reduction Act. Secretary Yellen gave a speech in March talking about place-based economic development, how it is starting to work and work in big ways under the Biden-Harris administration, talking about where some of the private sector investments as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act are going. And we are very, very focused on making sure that under direct pay, that local governments, nonprofits are aware of this opportunity, so the resources are going to similarly, sometimes economically challenged, sometimes forgotten places around the country. So I'm really delighted to be here to talk more about direct pay.
Jennifer?
Well, good afternoon. I am Jennifer Raleigh Collins, and before he gets out the door, let me give a special shout out and thanks to my former boss, Dr. Corey Wiggins, Federal Co-Chair for the Delta Regional Authority, for his acknowledgement earlier of me. It is absolutely always my pleasure to serve people. So Corey always talks about the fact that he's from Hazelhurst, Mississippi. Well, I'm from Meridian, Mississippi, and my grandmother raised us as we were growing up. When other folk came around, especially young men, you know, trying to holler, she would ask, who your people? So I want to say to everybody in this room that we your people. The fact that Bill, the mayor, all of these federal agencies have made ourselves available, and I will always get on planes, trains, automobiles across the Southeast region to make sure that you know we're your people. I get to serve the Biden-Harris administration as an appointee. My title is Regional Administrator for the Southeast region. That means I cover the entire Southeast region. When Kaya talked earlier about that red region, it's mine. And I'm just going to be real honest with you, because I'm a political appointee. It's red in more ways than one. And so I want to make sure, before I forget, that I encourage you to understand that it is important when we go vote that we think about the issues that you have brought up today. When you think about water, think about who's going to make sure that that investments come to your communities. Make sure that you think about who's going to make sure that money gets to you for housing. And so please make sure that you know who your people are. And I'll be done with that.
Well, that's a tough one to follow.
I'm going to be all day. So
You're going to be all day. Okay, okay. Well, I don't know if we're in the afternoon yet or not, but hello, everybody. I'm John Nicholson. I am the Chief of Staff at EPA Region 4, and we cover the same 8 southeastern states and 6 federally recognized Indian tribes here within Region 4. I come to this position. I'm not a political appointee, but I'm not a long-term career EPA. I'm in a special slot within the agency that brings me to this job. However, I come to the job from North Carolina, and there was a gentleman that used to be the Secretary of North Carolina who's now the Administrator of EPA. And I come with a good feeling and knowledge of where Administrator Regan is leading EPA. And from the day one of the Biden-Harris administration, as well as day one of his time on the job at EPA, it's about protecting the people, protecting the environment, and we've included taking care of underserved and overburdened communities. That's been a keystone. I will say that it's been foundational within the agency, and I'm seeing it grow within the region, that our folks are really focused on how do we integrate communities that have been overlooked in the past into the current discussion. It's become a part of our DNA, and I think that's important. So that's kind of where I sit. Of course, we manage the typical media that EPA works on, air, water, but we can go into more details with those as we move forward.
Well, thank you. I do want to dig into some of those details. Each of you all are representing agencies that just have immense resources that can benefit this part of the country. My friend Ed gave a little bit of a history lesson. He talked about the New Deal. Well, you know, we don't have to go that far back. There's a newer deal. We just all saw in the first round of the after Paycheck Protection Program, and who was able to get resources and who didn't get resources until there was some significant push and change. And then it opened up, and we saw more diverse communities, more diverse entrepreneurs take advantage of that. As Corley mentioned, the day one executive order. I had the privilege to be on the transition team, and I saw not just people like me who were going to leave after the transition process, but from Secretary Yellen, senior officials, cabinet secretaries, all did work to understand diversity and inclusion. And we were told that if everybody in the room looks like you, then you need to bring other people in the room. And so I've seen that continue through through the work of the administration, and that's so important for communities like the ones we're in today. David, you talked about direct pay. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I think, you know, while there's a lot of resources in the Inflation Reduction Act, that is a almost endless source of investment in these communities that few people know about.
So, let me, there it goes. So let me start by telling you what direct pay isn't, because I think that will get you very excited about what direct pay is. Direct pay is not a grant program. It's not a grant program. It's not a competitive grant. Everything that we just heard about notices of funding opportunity doesn't apply to direct pay. Direct pay is not a capped resource of funding, right? Like grant programs are, where there are a certain number of applications, but if demand exceeds the supply of funding, some people win, some people lose. Basically, the way that direct pay works is there are a series of tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act that are applicable to the private sector. If you're a small business, if you're a big business. Think about investments in clean energy, putting up everything from solar panels on the top of your business to building a solar farm, using geothermal for heating and cooling, buying qualified clean vehicles, installing chargers. All of those tax credits are now eligible for non-tax-paying organizations to access and to benefit from. So this hurts people. It hurt my head the first time I heard it, right? Because I used to be a local government finance officer. If somebody came into me and said, hey, I've got a great tax credit program from you, I'd kind of look at them a little bit quizzically and say, I don't pay taxes, why are you talking to me about this? The reason is because under the direct pay provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act, your city, Mayor, your nonprofit organization, your church are all eligible to take advantage of many of these same tax credits that the private sector can take advantage of.
My nonprofit that doesn't pay taxes, my church, my city.
Yep.
I just want to make sure y'all are hearing that, because
Right.
this is huge.
It is. So if you are, the complicated tax code language is an applicable entity. But if you're a local government, if you're a school district, if you're a county government, if you're a nonprofit organized under sections 501 to 530 of the tax code, you're an applicable entity. If you then meet the underlying requirements of the tax credit provision, you get the financial benefit of the tax credit. The other thing that's really important, and it goes, Bill, specifically to the issue of sort of like, how are we thinking about making sure that resources go to economically challenged places? How do we make sure that these tax investments are creating good jobs? There are a series of bonus provisions under the Inflation Reduction Act. So there is a bonus, this one is subject to an allocation process, for these sorts of projects going into low-income communities. There is a bonus not subject to an allocation for these projects go into what are known as energy communities. So if you may have had a coal-fired power plant in your community, or if you're putting a project on what used to be a brownfield site, you get a bonus. There are bonuses related to the use of domestic content in the project, and there's a bonus for bigger projects that's applicable if you're meeting requirements for prevailing wages and the use of registered apprenticeships. So we're making sure that these investments are creating good jobs. And when we're talking about, well, is this a little bit of money or not a little bit of money? On certain projects, it could cover half the cost of the investment if you meet all of the bonuses. And actually, if you meet all of the bonuses plus you get an allocation of the low-income community bonus, it goes up to 60 to 70% of the cost. And you could use it together with grants, right? So we've talked a lot about braiding and blending. So direct pay is a game changer if you're making investments in clean energy. By the way, for mayors, county commissioners who may be out there, investment and nonprofits, investments in clean energy that may then reduce your operating costs and save you money over time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to jump to you, John, because you talked a lot about clean energy, and you know, in addition to direct pay, the Inflation Reduction Act had the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, recently announced $20 billion in investments to improve climate conditions, lower energy costs in climate vulnerable communities. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that can benefit some of these communities?
Yeah, no, be happy to. Actually, this is relatively recent news. The announcement was just made back in this past month in early April about we actually combine it all of $27 billion in the Greenhouse Reduction Fund under 3 different programs. But we have the National Clean Investment Fund, which received $14 billion, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which received $6 billion, and then $7 billion for Solar for All. All of these are just open for business, and it's outside the normal EPA model. We went out to industry, the community, and picked grantees that are going to manage these funds. Under the National Clean Investment Fund, there were 3 organizations that were chosen to manage those. I could share your names with them. I don't have them in front of me right now. For the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, I believe there were 6 that were chosen to represent, and these are nationwide. The National Clean Investment Fund is honoring Justice 40, as you heard about from on our previous panel. The other 2, Clean Communities and Solar for All, all 100% directed to underserved communities. It's a significant opportunity and dovetails into what was shared by my colleague here. Opportunities for economic growth, opportunities for cutting your energy costs. Gosh, I'm probably forgetting a dozen other, but it's a tremendous opportunity that sits in front of us right now on the clean energy front that literally just opened up for business. I believe Hope is engaged as one of the members.
We are. Hope is, we receive $156 million to support residential solar in Mississippi and Arkansas. There are Solar for All, that's through the Solar for All program. There are Solar for All grantees that will serve nationally, but also serve in Alabama as well. These are for residential solar. The goal is to lower energy costs by at least 20%. And the priority is on underserved, climate vulnerable communities. During the resource panel, the Community Leadership Institute, some of my colleagues will be able to talk more about how those resources can be accessed. I will really applaud the administration for prioritizing making those grants available to organizations that have a track record of working in these communities. And those communities are working with community development financial institutions like Hope. We have, in addition to the Solar for All, the National Community Investment Fund, I think it's called, no, what it's called, the NCIF.
Yeah, you got it, NCIF.
Okay, is got billions of dollars that will run through organizations like Hope, and we can use to finance community facilities, to finance lowering energy costs at HBCUs, at churches, at nonprofits. And so we look forward to seeing if we can put some of those monies to use on the ground here. But that sort of gets me to the point I want to bring up with you, Jennifer. Often, and this portion I think true at HUD because of CDBG programs that go through states. They go through what some of us consider gatekeepers. And it's really important to get the resources as close to the ground as possible. You heard the discussion about some of the housing challenges, both owner-occupied and single and multifamily housing. What are some of the things that your agency is doing, that you're doing to drive these resources past the gatekeepers to the people who need the most?
So thank you for that question, because it perfectly ties into HUD's strategic priorities. So HUD has 4 external strategic priorities. The 5th priority is internal, about how we take care of our people. But the first one is supporting underserved communities. The second is ensuring access and increasing the production of affordable homes. Third being promoting home ownership. Fourth being advancing sustainable communities. And so I'm excited about what you were just talking about with the solar homes for all. HUD has put out a GRRP program, which is our Green Resilience Retrofit program. That's one of our efforts to make sure that we have sustainable communities. But the reality is, in most of the communities, and I'll just talk about Alabama here, Alabama has 14 entitlement communities. How many of y'all in this room are in one of those? Bessemer, Birmingham, okay? The majority of you are not, right? And so your money goes, you have to go to ADECA. In Mississippi, you would have to go to Mississippi Home Corps, Mississippi Development Authority. They are the 2 administering agencies. In Georgia, it's DCEA, Tennessee. Everybody has one. I pointed out the color earlier for a reason. Because the reality is, it's Biden-Harris administration money that is this historic investments that you keep hearing about. And maybe some people are not interested in making sure that they are supporting underserved communities with money that is considered Biden-Harris administration money. So it's important that you know what's out there. So one of the things I say to the field office directors, and we have field office directors, we have Ken Free here in Alabama. So if you need to reach someone from HUD in Alabama, go to Ken. Because I will tell you, if you call me, if you catch me and I'm not on a plane, if you're in Alabama, I'm going to bring Ken in on the conversation. So I'm going to ask that you start with your field office directors. And the reason I do that is because they have direct contact with the program, with HUD program teams, with the CDBG staff, with the single family, with the multifamily, that can help connect you to the resources that you need, that will make sure that you know what resources are available. So one of the things that I say to them all the time is start with the people first. Do I not? Start and end with the people first. And if the people don't know about the resources, we are not in what we call field policy management section of HUD, we're not doing our job. I'm a community lawyer by training, by being groomed. And so I believe in information sometimes being demanded up, right? If that information is not flowing down, we got to make sure that the community is aware so that you can tap in. I shared last night at dinner, and I'll say it publicly now, and I gave y'all the wrong amount. Last night I gave y'all 13.975 that's still available in one of the states in my region, the entire Southeast region, from CDBG CV money. I was wrong. I went back and looked at my figures this morning early. It was 38 million untapped resources. Well, you don't know to go get it if you don't know it exists. So I'm telling you, if you're in Alabama, call Ken and say, what is available through CDBG? We'll make sure that you get connected with the grantee. If your congressional representatives, we have Congresswoman Sewell's office represented here. If there have been congressionally funded projects and they aren't moving, call and say, why aren't they moving? I can then reach out to CDBG and say, why aren't these agreements signed? Are you still waiting on something from the community? So I will say what we need you to do, what I need you to do as a regional administrator is demand up while we're pushing the information also down.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's important information for us to know, and really fortunate to have advocates and that are helping to carry that message where it needs to be heard. John, we talked about the greenhouse gas funds. What other resources does EPA have that these communities, these mayors, organizations should be aware of, and what are some of the things that you're doing to try to level the playing field so that they are accessible?
So we've been blessed with the largesse of the Biden-Harris administration, the bill, and the IRA funds. And sometimes it's tough to keep up with them. I'm sure it's the same for all of you, with especially the acronym soup that we provide all the time. But we still, I should mention, the states are key partners for us and how we communicate with the states. And I know it's important for each one of you too on what that relationship is like. In the lines of available funding right now, brownfield grants just recently been announced as of yesterday. Some right here for Selma and the state of Alabama. Wastewater is a huge emphasis for the agency right now, trying to push those funds out the door. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about a lot of discussion about technical assistance through all of us. Technical assistance, I just can't stomp my foot hard enough that make that ask. Ask us to come out, ask us to come to your community and sit down with you and take a look at what we have. We have myriads of technical assistance programs that we can offer to you, be it in brownfield, in water, and we have a new program that just recently stood up called the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers. We call them TIC-TACs. Region 4 is blessed to have 2 TIC-TACs right here in the region. One's the Deep South Environmental Center out of New Orleans. They're not officially in our region, but they extend into Region 4. And then we have the Research Triangle Institute up in Raleigh that represents the region. Believe they were each given, I'm looking at my smart folks in the back of the room, 15 million for the Deep South Center and 10 million for the RTI TIC-TAC. But what these do, it again provides technical assistance. It works with you on capacity building. They work with you on how to work through the mystery of writing grants. We've heard a lot about that, and we agree it's a tough prospect. But they're another means to help you in your community break through the difficultness of coming through the government bureaucracy. So I highly encourage those. And
Bill, that's available through every agency. I think the Biden-Harris administration heard the community when it said we don't have the capacity. I will tell you, I've kind of heard enough of, well, we don't have the capacity. Because it has almost become a carried message. So I want y'all to stop carrying that message and start tapping into these resources. HUD has technical assistance. We have our distressed cities technical assistance. Most of you all probably qualify. I know Selma received the technical distressed cities technical assistance support. Tap into the technical assistance. Every one of our grant programs has. And if you're not familiar with HUD Exchange, there's so many resources on HUD Exchange. Go to HUD.gov, put in HUD Exchange. It will take you to all of the resources that you need. It will directly tap you into guides to help you. And so the reality is we can't come put somebody necessarily in your office to say, hey, now you have a staff person. But if you tap into those resources, it helps you to expand and build the capacity that you need. There is one-on-one stuff through FPM, support through FPM that we can help you out with. So if you have a question, instead of saying, I don't have the capacity to apply, call Ken, call Mr. Hollis and say, what resource can we tap into? And I also want to just make sure that we share about overlaying some of the federal resources as well. You know, I always say HUD and Department of Transportation should be connected at the hip, because depending on how you are strategically planning in your town, if you are building housing along a transit line, then that ties into tapping into some HUD resources, tapping into some DOT resources. So think creatively, think broadly, tap into advisors like Hope and see how we overcome that challenge. I shared with someone last night, I'll just tell my whole dinner party story. I have 3 sons, and I used to tell them, if we're going to Disney and a log falls in the road, are we gonna turn around and go home? No, my sons were going to tell me, get over it, get around it, get under it, but get to the other side, because we're going to go to Disney. I am telling you, this Biden-Harris administration money, this historic money, is Disney. Get over it, get around it, get to the other side of it, and get these coins.
Can I, just one comment. The first panel this morning also talked about community. And I think it's extremely important that you all communicate with each other from the community level. You don't want to hear our tale of woe. It's tough pushing down on these. And if you know coming up and meet us somewhere, we can do a lot better job. But the community is key. All great ideas aren't emanating out of Washington, Atlanta in my case. It's at the community level. So I thought that was very good by the first panel this morning.
Thank you. David, I think certainly we've heard some ideas about how communities can navigate these resources. I know these are relatively new programs, but are there strategies that you're seeing, if you're seeing other communities take advantage of, that want to make sure that these folks are aware of, that we should put to work to make sure that we benefit from these programs and dollars?
Yeah, I mean, on direct pay, I think the first step, right, is partnership, right? So one of the really great things about direct pay is you don't have sort of a middle person that you have to go through. Every community could do it, but more importantly, it's not just the local government that could do it. So close collaboration between local governments and nonprofits, local philanthropy if it's there, the school district. The more people come together and come up with basically a community plan on how to access direct pay for the purposes of clean energy transition, the better off you'll be. Planning would be incredibly important as well, right? So I always tell people, don't start to think about where you want to use direct pay by going to the tax code. I will tell you, in the 30 years since I last looked at the federal tax code when I was in law school, it didn't get less complicated. But the place where you can start are your own plans, right? Whether you've got a capital plan for your community, your nonprofit, whether you've got a plan around things that you want to do to increase sustainability, or a plan around climate action, those are the right places to start with. And when you look at the projects where you're trying to identify funding and then look at what's available under direct pay, I think you'll start to see where this could be a really powerful tool in terms of financing. So I'd certainly start with partnerships. I would start with planning. And I'll say one thing about technical assistance. So the first thing that I was taught when I walked into the Treasury Department is to begin every presentation where we're just presenting by saying, Treasury Department doesn't provide tax advice, right? But there are all of these other departments at the federal level that can provide different types of related assistance. So John, we were in Puerto Rico trying to help folks there think through what they could do around direct pay. We actually partnered with the Tic Tac in Puerto Rico around that. We're part of the Thriving Communities Network so that we work with efforts like the Rural Partners Network. But then the other thing in terms of technical assistance that's really important is as you get further into a project, by that first point, that partnership point becomes important, because if there are 20 different entities in your community that are eligible for direct pay, not all 20 of them need to go out and figure out who their own tax consultant is. So working together is important at the beginning, and it's important in following through.
Thank you. I think we're going to shift to questions for a few minutes. I have one that I'm looking forward to hearing the response to. How will any changes, leadership changes in the legislative and executive branches impact the availability of this funding in the programs like IRA in the future? And what should we be doing in case there are changes that are not necessarily favorable to these programs?
Okay. Well, first of all, you know, I've been working with local governments, working with state governments, working with nonprofits for a long time. I thought I had seen everything, but I've given up over the last 8 years or so trying to predict anything. But one thing that I could tell you about the design of the Inflation Reduction Act, and another benefit of the tax credit piece of it, is it has a run life, right? It has a 10-year run period in terms of the tax credits. So I know that there are a lot of people who've asked this question, and I think that's important. That's pretty relevant. I think that there was recent commentary by a member of the former administration who talked about some of the provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, and he said, yeah, clean energy tax credits are pretty popular, right? Because they're popular not just with folks in local government, folks in the nonprofit sector, they're also very popular with the private sector. That's the good news. The bad news is it might be a good thing if these things had more than a 10-year run period. So I think, you know, I don't know that we're going to completely solve every issue between now and 2032 in terms of clean energy transition. So yes, certainly beyond that 10-year period, as you said, it matters who's in office.
It does. I will say that it has been estimated that there is between 1.5 and 3.8 million units of housing that we are short here in America. That didn't start a few years ago, 3 years ago, and it's not going to end in 2024. The reality is we're still going to be dealing with a housing shortage. whether or not those resources that have been committed under this administration will be there is a different story, and how those resources can be utilized. We've tried very hard. Prior Secretary Marsha Fudge, now Acting Secretary Tideman, is doing everything that the administration can to make sure that the resources that have been made available come to the underserved communities. I will point out, though, that, let's not just look at the executive branch. The question asked about the legislative branch, too, because the reality is we don't make allocations or appropriations. They're made in Congress. And so, again, think about who is going to make those allocations when you're talking about vouchers, when you're talking, who's going to make those appropriations when you're talking about the programs that HUD funds, like our neighborhood choice program, our choice voucher program. How are we going to make sure that those resources get out? And so please make sure that when you are making decisions about your community and you're acting in leadership in your community, that you're helping your community connect the dots.
I know that with the greenhouse gas funds, I know the EPA is working to move very quickly, and there are some deadlines on getting those funds obligated. And so I think there's an urgency.
There's definitely a sense of urgency, and I would say throughout the agency, will not say I know, our number one priority are getting all those grants out the door this year and on the varying timelines. It's manpower intensive, but who isn't challenged by their resources, and it's from our perspective, it's our number one priority within the region, and I believe within the agency, is getting those funds out the door.
Bill, before we time out, can I address, I think it was Mayor Lake's question from earlier, because I don't want to run out of time, because I know that this answer is going to help somebody besides Mayor Lake from York. The question was, what are you going to do about housing, right? I will tell you, there are resources. I've talked about them enough. But you also have some of the answers right in your own communities and right within your own power. There are some schools that have closed in your community, some old motels, hotels, that we encourage you to consider about conversion. Reutilizing some of the assets that you already have. Tap also into looking at zoning. We recognize that there have been some discriminatory zoning practices that have defined the Southeast region. Go back and look at those ordinances and those zoning laws to make sure that you are taking the barriers off and putting things in place. So if you have a barrier that says you can only build a 3,600 square foot house here, single family home, and that's really not making sense for your community anymore, for Main Street to look like that, go back and relook at the zoning and say, you know what, can we increase density and put some utilization and multi-income apartments here to increase affordable housing in your community? Because again, you can build it, but people won't come if they don't have a place to live. I think that was paraphrasing what you said. So making sure that you are taking the limits off yourself. And then one last thing I want you to tap into as a local resource, faith-based communities. I think I heard a preacher earlier in the room, have a lot of land. They have a lot of land, and maybe they got a lot of houses that have not been put into the Section 8 program. So we're encouraging landlords to put those houses into the Section 8 program, so through your PHA, so that we can make sure that when you do have those workforce folk, we have workforce housing, or you have affordable housing that folk need to live in, and then make sure that you're controlling the narrative when you start taking advantage of some of those strategies. And when I say controlling the narrative, control the narrative against the NIMBYs, those who say not in my backyard. Because a lot of times the people who are in need of affordable housing are your teachers, they're your police, your law enforcement safety officers. Okay, they're the folk who are the CNAs taking care of grandma. So make sure that when we message, we don't message our folk out by listening to folk who got to live in that 3,600 square foot house that was built on Main Street under a red lined program.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panel. I think this wraps up the Economic Mobility Forum part of our day. I want to thank our folks. I think we had over 100 people who joined us virtually online, in addition to the folks who weathered the heat here to take advantage of this. I think the fact that you're all here and online says a lot about how important this information is. I think the fact that we have such accomplished individuals, senior officials bringing us information shows that this is not business as usual. This is not a normal time. These are historic resources, and I really hope that everyone got information that you can put to use. We're going to continue today. We're going to have lunch shortly. I'll let someone tell us what the instructions are, but with this afternoon, you see tables around the room. We're going to have folks who are going to spend time with you one-on-one, go into more detail about some of the opportunities you've heard about today. And so I'm really hopeful that this will put us on a path where we can push that log out of the road and get to Disneyland. Because we all know that we all deserve, our communities deserve more enjoyment, more of the benefits that this country has to offer. Before we wrap up, I want to say once again thanks to the administration, to the White House, who worked closely with the folks at Treasury to help organize this event. We had one last month in Cleveland, Mississippi, in the heart of Mississippi's Delta. We're targeting and have another one in September, mid-September, in West Memphis, Arkansas. But I think you heard, and I think we all appreciate, there's an urgency. We need to roll up our sleeves and do everything we can to get these resources into our communities. So again, thank you all for coming. I wanted to ask my colleagues at Hope to stand. We didn't talk a lot about the things we do at Hope today, but in addition to organizing this, these folks are working 25 hours a day sometimes to make sure that we do everything we can to improve conditions. We have an initiative to close the housing gap that we talked about in the Deep South. We started as a loan fund helping businesses get capital that they deserve and need. So we have business lending. We finance community facilities, rural hospitals, schools, grocery stores. If you look at these communities, I don't talk about us as a financial institution, but if you look at what a community needs to climb the economic ladder, at some point you're going to need capital. And so many of those communities don't have access to capital. So we do everything we can to make sure these communities have the capital they need. And so consider Hope your personal banker, your financial problem solver. If we can't provide the financing ourselves, we'll try to connect you with others who can. But it is critical that we take advantage of this moment and get these resources into our communities. Last but not least, you've seen the team around here with the cards, working on the AV, Lender Global, Rachel, where's Rachel? She's probably somewhere in her team. Rachel, thank to you and Lender Global they've been logistics experts helping us navigate these events. Done a great job. And is Mayor Perkins, thank you again for being such a gracious host. Thank you. Thank you all. Enjoy lunch and look forward to engaging with you during the afternoon. Thank you.